Hey Rob, I don't know if you can hear. We can't hear you because I think you muted.
Of
I
course. How
don't
about
know if
now?
I can hear you. I hope other people can hear us.
All right, good. So the last 2 minutes, there was no audio, right? Nobody could hear.
No,
Of course.
it was a silent introduction.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I have Lee Hoy and Emilie Talpin here with me today, and they're both, very, very experienced wildlife and macro photography shooters. Lee's been doing this a long time. Emilie, a lot of people might not know that Lee was actually Emilie's mentor. What brought
He
her
was.
into the OM
And
cameras?
it's funny because before you were my mentor, you actually judged a competition for Olympus at the time. And it was during COVID. And we were all stuck at home, so I was participating in all the competition, and you picked me for the winner of the macro competition. So that gave me a lot of confidence to continue and participate. And then I was so excited that you picked me because I really wanted to have you as a mentor. So it really was a blessing.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So anyhow, Emilie, why don't, I think a lot of people or a lot of my viewers know you already because this is at least your third time being a guest, and it's always been such a privilege and honor to have you here because the amazing photography that I've seen you do in macro photography, but I think you really also do a lot of wildlife birding type photography that I haven't talked about much, so we'll get into that today. So tell us, for those that may not know you, a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I always have so much fun. It's been, I'm very thankful that you've been inviting me to your channel. And so I started as a macro photographer, but then thanks to Lee, he pushed me into other directions as well. So I do a lot of bird photography, and I recently joined Westside Nature Tours, and so they are a company that are organizing tours for birding and wildlife with photographers, but also birders. And it's been so far amazing. I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity. So I'm trying to get better at birding, so maybe I will go on all the tours that we're organizing, so I learn more about birding, and I become a better birder. But it's fun. I just feel so happy when I have my camera and I'm out in the field taking photos. And that's what just makes me happy. So I recently resigned from my position as a teacher to just go into photography full time. So I'll be
Living the
setting up.
dream.
Yes, I know. Lee has been pushing me, and he finally, made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I'm so thankful. The Whiteside family it's such a great family. It's a little bit like the OM System family, to be honest with you.
Yes.
It's been really amazing meeting all the photographers, having discussion, sharing tips, and being inspired by everybody. So yeah, it's just my really happy place, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to give it a real go. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I've been an OM System ambassador since I think 2022, 22,
Yeah.
21. So yeah,
You made your
same.
debut right here, actually.
I did. I did. You were the first one to invite me, and I was like,
Yeah.
really? So yes, just everything has been. Yeah, I'm extremely lucky.
Great, great. Thank you again for being here. And
Anytime.
Lee, this is your first time here, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that may never even heard of you before, but thankfully you're here now and share your experience, skills with us. Tell us how to do wildlife photography because you really have a very deep breadth of experience traveling the world and doing photography. Like I said, I encourage people to check out the links below to your link tree, see the kind of photography you're doing. But let's hear in your own words. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
You bet. Again, my name's Lee Hoy. I live in the mountains of West Texas, out near Big Bend National Park. I got interested in photography and wildlife at a very early age. I had a toy camera my parents bought me. Finally found that on eBay in the box. I couldn't even remember the model. So if I'm ever doing this for my house out in West Texas, you'll see that. I then was given at about age 16. My mom gave me a Canon AE1 because the meter was broken, and she had a couple of lenses, and I was forced to learn. Some of y'all might be able to see that, the Sunny F16 rule. So if you just tattoo it on your arm, it'll be real easy to remember. No, I did that in memory of what it used to be like. So I learned the Sunny F16 rule from John Shaw's books, and the cool thing was, like, using slide film and the Sunny F16 rule, I had to do all the calculations in my head, right? So I learned nothing but manual and reading light, and got very into it and really enjoyed it. And in high school, my grandparents bought me a Canon 630, a film camera, and the very first Canon L lens, which was a 100 to 300, 4.5 to 5.6 macro. I mean, it was an interesting lens, and I had that for 20 something years, really. Because what happened was I got very into birds, and I set my camera down because I got so into birding. And one day I went, oh, what have I been doing? Picked up a Canon again. But after about 25 years of using Canon, I saw that they were falling way behind in the mirrorless camera department.
Right.
And I did a 10-mile hike. I would take people up to see the Klima warbler in Big Bend National Park, and carrying a tripod and a 600 millimeter, my shoulders would have bruises, and I just got tired of that. And I thought, I'm going to start looking around. So I actually bought some Sony lenses and some Sigma art lenses. And Kevin Laughlin, owner of Wildside Nature Tours, and then Robert, my favorite salesman down at Precision Camera, they'd been telling me about what at the time was Olympus. So I ended up getting an Olympus EM1X and EM1 Mark III and some lenses. And it did not take me but a couple of months. I've literally captured the same bolt of lightning with all three systems on a tripod using remotes, and it didn't take me very long to realize that the features that Olympus offered were far in advance of what Sony or Canon had at the time. Canon didn't even have really mirrorless at the time to even try. And I could just see the lightweight, the quality of the lenses, the images I was getting. So I actually sold everything else and moved full bore into Olympus gear. Within a year of moving systems, Olympus invited me to become what was then an Olympus educator, which is probably one of the accomplishments I'm most proud of in my photography.
Yeah.
I'm not a big networker. I don't rub a lot of elbows. Frankly, I'm in the field. I've been at a home. This is my wife's apartment. I live in West Texas. I've only been at my home. I think this is my 7th day in 2024. So I've been on the road leading workshops every other day. So, I'm out in the field doing what I love. I love teaching. So getting made what then was an educator, and now we're OM system ambassadors, that was probably one of my favorite things that I've seen occur, because if I believe in something, you won't find a more brutally honest. In fact, if you want people that watch my YouTube channel laugh, because they know I don't give a crap whether they like me or not. I don't give a crap whether they agree with me or not. I always say, come out in the field, shoot next to me, and I'll prove it. Right. So, because I do like 5 things in this world great, and I suck at everything else. So if you do what you're really good at, you seem like you really know what you're talking about. So for me, this journey through photography, I've always enjoyed wildlife, landscape, night sky, and macro. And in macro specifically, insects, reptiles, amphibians. I don't do a lot of just plain flowers. People who do that really well, have a little bit of a different eye, I think, for things. So for me, I did not have a lot of, I grew up with parents as educators, so we didn't get to go on big trips. So for me, what I love is being able to bring my images back, because when I was young, I traveled vicariously through maps and images. So my goal is to bring things that many people might never see from the Amazon or Florida or, Churchill, wherever it might be, that if they too were like me growing up, that at least they can feel like they're there in the moment through my images. And that's what I really love. And then the pleasure of mentoring Emilie was awesome. We met a lot. And what was cool was I saw how she sucked up information and would go try and wasn't afraid of failure, and did a lot of the things that I could tell Yeah, she would be a great workshop leader. Because being a really good photographer is important, but being amazing with people, and she's always happy. Frankly, it pisses me off. I've never seen her upset, and I'm going to work on that. I'm going to try to get her upset sometime.
Yeah.
So we have a great rapport. I'm tickled that she's at Wildside Nature Tours, where I'm senior photography workshop leader. I lead some workshops for precision camera and video out of Austin, Texas, and I'm a contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. So those are, as you can imagine, and now my YouTube channel rolling along. Thanks to Emilie, badgered me on that too.
Yeah.
It keeps me busy, but I love what I do.
Absolutely.
It's hard not to suck up all the information when you have amazing mentor like you. I'm still learning, and we all, as photographers, we always learning something new, and that's what I love. And actually, I'm part of Lee. You have to tell them that you also have a mentorship program. So he also invited me to his mentorship program, which
Okay.
has been fantastic.
Definitely.
Mentorship. I've had some great mentors in my life. I've had a lot of careers. It's been a wild journey, which we don't have time to cover today. But the people that have influenced me in my life were always those who were further down the road on whatever journey I was on. And I realized, I have a saying: master your system, master your photography. I don't give a crap what camera body you're using. If you master it, your images will be better than someone who has new gear that doesn't know crap about it. Okay. Plain and simple, right? So I always say master your system, master your photography. So I created an OM system mentorship program, limited it to 12 people. And this year we're doing the EM1X and the OM1. The next session will be OM1 and OM1 Mark II. And it is basically about 8 to 9 months, 15 sessions where we dive deep into all the features that apply to nature photography. It applies to portrait. I don't give a crap, So we dive deep into that. You have projects, you have handouts. You have 4 private interactions with me through Zoom and stuff. So it's very in depth. It's for people who truly want to master the system and take their photography to the next level. So yeah, I invited Emilie come join me again because she's also great at contributing, and she goes out and does some things I don't have time to do a lot. So it helps provide a very well-rounded program.
Yeah, and I think really finding a mentor or doing workshops.
Yeah. And Rob, you also are a mentor, because I was reading in the comment, Robin said you inspire me to do, live YouTube. And I think that's what I love about the whole community is we all thankful for what each of us is contributing. And it's all about sharing. It's not a competition. We out there to share what we're seeing. And that's what I really like about this community. Yeah. So thank you for what you're doing too, Rob.
Well, I just, like you guys, I really love photography. Wanted to share this passion with other people that, might have some interest into it. They can enjoy it. I don't know. I'm not as articulate as most people, unfortunately, but I come out and I just want to share my passion for photography, and hopefully that'll inspire others to get into it. I think it's definitely, photography hasn't gone anywhere because cell phones, as you can tell, have exploded, and more people are taking pictures now more than ever. But definitely, getting a real camera, working with standing photography, kind of the direction I want to go. And I wanted to touch on something Lee said about, learning your equipment and gear. That's been my focus from the beginning. Getting the gear out of the way, that needs to become second nature. You've mastered the gear and the equipment, then you can go out and really enjoy your photography. Because people get so frustrated with settings and just they put the camera on the shelf and never touch it again. And that's the most common comment that I ever get on my videos is, if it wasn't for you, my camera would be sitting on the shelf. Now they can go out and enjoy it. And I think this is one of the most important things that you guys are doing is you're offering in-person mentoring workshops. That's really the best way to get to learn your equipment, because you get a lot of guidance, personalized guidance, drawing on your expertise, feedback, inspiration, of course. And even on top of that, A lot of times at the workshops, you'll meet other photographers that you can network with. I've met so many people in the photo club. We often go out, other days that are not posted. Great being around other like-minded people. But let me ask you, when you guys are mentoring, we'll talk specifically about OM systems, but what do you think is the most common mistake or challenge that you see people just getting into? Start with you, Lee, on that.
One of the problems that I see biggest for people who are trying to get into photography is, and in today's world, it's more so than ever. Okay. You have 873 million inputs. Okay. Whether it be through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube Live, whatever. And out of 873 million, the majority of those suck. They're not giving good information. Okay. Just because someone has a top contributor badge on Facebook, those are oftentimes, I don't care. And I might hurt some of those top contributors over here on the right in the chats. They're often some of the worst advice. You will never find me on even an OM system Facebook group. Okay. Because there's so much input. Who do you trust? Right? Who do you learn from? And this all goes back to what we've already started talking about. Find people whose imagery you respect. For one of my fun things is when I see someone trying to give bad advice on Facebook, you click on their profile, go look at their images, and not picking on 20 to 40-year-old men, but I'm going to pick on 20 to 40-year-old men. You love having the latest gear and you love talking big on social media, but your images often suck. I mean, I just don't, sometimes they don't, but you click on their profile, and if their images are terrible, why are you listening to their advice, right? So rather than trying to take in 873 million words of advice, find those whose work inspire you, find those whose work challenges you, find those who be honest about your images. If you just want attaboys, show your images to grandma. Okay. She'll always tell you they're awesome. Just like we watch, you watch American Idol and somebody goes, well, my mom says I can sing. Well, your mom's an idiot, So when you get a critique, don't set your ego aside and learn. I'm the most brutal critique you'll often meet, and I'm more so on my own images than anybody's else. I'm not saying this to brag. I deleted an image that another leader on the same workshop as me got that is now in the next to final rounds in Photographer of the Year. I mean, because it had a white sky, and I don't generally like white skies. I'm a brutal critic, man. I am hard on my own images, but you can't learn from pats on the back. Okay. You're going to learn more from your failures. So find someone in your life who will be honest with you. If my wife says, how do I look in this dress? Guess what? Oh, get a shovel, bury it, and bury the dress, or I'll buy it for you right now, honey, and go put it on, So find the person who cares enough about you to be honest in your imagery and to push you to learn, and who won't accept you being at the status quo. Okay. I have images that I took 20 years ago that at the time I was look at me. And now I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe anybody ever saw that. Right. So your level of excellence changes over time, and find the person that lifts you up in that excellence by challenging, and that's hard to do in a social media world. So people that truly care, a lot of people think because I can be a brutal critic. I mean, I remember judging a photo contest for the St. Louis Camera Club, and I described one image as a dumpster fire. And I mean, it was. I don't know how else to describe it,
Right.
And I'm sure some people thought that was harsh, but like it really was. I mean, how else sometimes there's nothing positive. If there is something positive to say, I'm damn sure going to say something positive about it. So find a smaller group of input so that you're not having to filter constantly changing messages, because in this world, that's what we get a lot. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest challenges. Second biggest challenge is people are afraid of high ISOs, and their shutter speed is always too slow for wildlife photography. Number one in the field, 90% of my clients, something's wrong with my images. They're blurry. Well, what's your focal length? 1,000. What's your shutter speed? 1/500. You're 73 years old. You're probably not going to pull that off. All
Yeah,
right, did I
that
get on my soapbox again? Dang it.
yeah, you did, but that's all right. I mean, I think the two key takeaways there really is definitely, finding images that inspire you, and then people that and look at mentors or various people that inspire you. If they're any good, then dig a little deeper and see if they do offer mentoring, or you can with. Uh, and that's why the workshops are great, because I'm sure you've had many great photographers attend the workshops. Well, that people can connect with. They're not just beginners, right? They're coming there for the experience, share their passion for photography with others. But that's the main thing, is find the voice uh, you can connect with, right? 'Cause
Yes.
that's one of the things. Like, a lot of people, I'm not like the alpha, male personality like you, Lee, but I have an audience that I can connect
Yes.
with and people
Yes.
enjoy. And
Yes.
I think you definitely have your audience and people
Yep.
can connect with. And Emily is like, just like Robin Wong. And Robin, hey Robin, how you doing? Robin's in the house. But you're like the happiest photographer on earth, just like Robin. Every time I see you,
How not
always
to be
smiling
happy?
and excited. And I think you've just started doing this officially anyway. This mentoring and workshopping is too. But I'm sure definitely you've seen people do common mistakes. What are some of the things that you find that common?
I think a lot of people think, hey, I got the latest gear, so obviously my photos are going to be amazing. Like, how can I get this beautiful night photography straight out of the camera? Well, no, you're going to have to do post processing. And I think like it's the 2 P and F, practice. You really want to practice, practice, practice. You're going to have to be patient with yourself as well. And then you are going to have to embrace failure, because you're going to fail. And that's by failing that you either going to discover something that you didn't know, and that's going to improve your photography. I think when I started, it's always in my head. Lee told me, you need to read your manual. You need to spend time getting to know your camera. And you can't go on a workshop with a brand new camera without having done a little bit of work. You can't be too snub. Yeah, I don't shoot goals. Goals are the best thing you can go and shoot, because it's practicing. And that's how you're not going to miss the shot of the bald eagle grabbing a fish, because you've practiced on common birds. So it's just, my camera is with me every day. I go shopping, it's with me. I go pick up my mail, it's with me. I go walking, it's with me. I sleep pretty close to my camera. I'm always at arm reach of my cameras, because I don't want to miss a moment. And every day is an opportunity for me to create something. But also patience, because you're going to be disappointed sometimes, and that's part of the learning process. And there are days where I take my camera on a walk, and that's it. Doesn't do anything. It happens, but who knows what will happen the next day. And revisit places as well. Don't think like, oh yeah, well, I've been to this pond once or twice and I'm done with it. No, if you're shooting wildlife, every day is a new day at wherever you are. So you need to discover this place with the different seasons and the different wildlife that's going to come to your pond. You don't have to go on trips across the world to find subjects that you can photograph. And I think that's also why I like macro. So I would say, if you can, yeah, find your niche. If it's bird photography, that's great, but also try something else like macro or landscape, because you will learn things from the different genres that are going to help you be a better photographer with the type of photography that you want to do.
Yeah,
And yeah, Robin said, if you are truly happy and enjoy the whole process of photography, it's a lot easier to shoot great images.
Yeah.
It is very, very true. Just, have an open mind, an open heart. Think of the type of photo you want to get, but also don't block yourself. Just let it be inspired and be open. And yeah, happiness for me is important. If you going out with your camera and you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna get today, and you stressed and you upset, and it's gonna happen, especially if you're a wildlife photographer. No, it's like, well, I had a great drive. I had a great 4-hour drive to this location, and I've seen a lot of great things. I don't have the photo I thought I would have, but I still learn things through the process, and I enjoy my day. I think it's so important.
Rob,
I
you
think
said something a minute ago that triggered. I like to use phrases a lot. I have little sayings. I mean, I'm from Texas, from the South. We have all kinds of sayings, some appropriate for YouTube and some not. But one of the things you said was that made me think is one of my phrases is subconscious intentionality. And that's related to mastering your system. I'll say that again, subconscious intentionality. I can pick up my OM1 and I know that my front dial going right is a faster shutter speed. I know my rear dial going right is a smaller aperture. I know that my exposure compensation button for wildlife and macro turns subject detection on and off. I know that if I'm in a landscape mode, it turns on live neutral density filter. I know my red button, if I'm in a wildlife mode on the OM1 Mark II, is for locking focus on a particular subject. I know for landscape mode, it's high res shot, right? I know that my AEL button in every mode is for focus stacking, right? I know I turn the front buttons off because I kept touching them accidentally too much. I know that in night sky, that if I press the red button, it can turn night vision on it, right? So I can just pick up my camera body, different ones, and I know exactly what those buttons do. I'm not thinking about it, right? And particularly for wildlife or macro, where instants, fractions of a second make a difference. You don't get great wildlife photography doing this, particularly for us old farts, right? You got your glasses up and you're like, and then you're making your changes on the back of the LCD. Meanwhile, the Jaguar grabbed the baby capybara and you're back here fiddle farting around with your settings
right.
instead of doing this, right? Instead of looking at the subject, making the adjustments, you're spending too much time trying to think about what you need to do, not reacting. And that's what I think a lot of people don't spend enough time. They probably see some of us as obsessive. Well, we are. That's why we get some of the images we get. And if you want to get those images regularly, that's what it takes, is knowing the tool so well that you don't think about it. You could go buy $1,000 hammer, but if you hold it by the head and try to drive a nail, it's going to be just as bad as a $2 hammer, right? So master that tool, develop that subconscious intentionality.
Yeah, and Andrew say he can barely remember which out of the two light switches turn on the stairs. You need to go up those stairs more often. That's the problem. If
That's
you're
right,
not
man.
going up those
100
stairs more
times a
often,
day. Flip that sucker.
Oh my God. Yeah, definitely.
we're going to
You
be
know,
invited more on Rob's channel.
yeah, knowing the gear, and developing that muscle memory, subconsciously just making changes or to settings without having to think about it, right? Definitely one of the most basic foundational things. That's why it's important to go out and practice. Like Emilie was saying, you can't just go to a local park a couple of times. Say, there's nothing here. You have to go back over and over again and practice over and over again as much as you can. Right? I can't tell you how many times when I'm trying to learn a camera system, different feature, or get good at something. I can't tell you how many times I fell asleep with a camera next to me in my bed because I was sitting there just like this. And then I'll put it down and then I'll think about it. And then somewhere along the line, I wake up the next morning, right? But that's, it obviously I have to have a passion for this. I think I'm
Yeah.
crazy, but I can tell you it's, how many pictures do I have of my feet? Because I'm like, okay, what does this do? Click. It's like I am constantly trying to take pictures, try different settings, develop that muscle memory and button configuration that works best for the situation I want to get into. Then going out and practicing, right? Like you guys both recommend reading the manual, something I've never done, but I think Lee, you've mentioned before you've read it like 3 times.
For every camera body that I own, I've probably read it through 3 times. And ironically enough, that was motivated by a professor in seminary because he taught me the importance of footnotes, right? And oftentimes in your owner's manual, it is the footnotes. So what happens is like we get all kinds of photographers on our workshops. I mean, I just finished my first ever OM system only workshop in Florida. I literally flew back yesterday. But I'll have folks with Nikon, Canon, and I like helping everybody. That's no problem. But I'll have a Nikon user come up and say, "Well, we now have kind of a pro capture thing, and it does 120 frames per second." I'm like, "Yes, in JPEG. That's the footnote. The marketing is it does 120 frames per second, and there's always an asterisk, right? And nobody
Yeah.
ever reads the asterisk. I'm the guy. I read asterisks more than I read the big text." Because that's the limitations. So my favorite drive mode is SH2 for wildlife photography, 50 frames per second. Now, what do I hear people bemoaning? Oh, I just don't have time to go through that. You're retired. What the hell else are you doing, right? I've seen your lifestyle, right? So, maybe
Yeah.
cut 2 hours out of coffee drinking and shift some of that into photography or whatever, right? So but in SH2, I know I can't go above ISO 12.8. And on the OM1, I can't go below 1/640th of a second shutter speed, which you wouldn't want to be slower than that at 50
Yeah.
frames
And
per
that's in the
second.
footnotes.
It's in
That's
the
not,
footnotes. It's in
yeah.
the footnotes. And, I know I'll shoot up to ISO 25.6. Well, that's going to impact my autofocusing accuracy, and that's going to impact my overall drive mode speed. And, but people, they read the marketing material. They never read the footnotes in the owner's manual. And then they get frustrated when it doesn't do what they thought it would do, and that's where this huge base of knowledge. I also love the creative side of photography just as much as the technical. But if you master the technical, suddenly you're freed up to focus on the creative, right? So that the technical becomes that subconscious intentionality. And then you begin developing subconscious intentionality with creative sides. And sometimes it becomes even harder to explain why you thought of that image that you captured because you're just doing it. So that's where it kind of all ties in for me, is helping people. I think it was, I can't remember his name. He just posted, "Do any of us ever play with film?" I play with film about as much as I would like to go back to riding in a covered wagon versus drive my new pickup. No, I hate film. I'm glad I'm away from film. I don't need that nostalgia. It would drive me absolutely nuts to have to shoot with film. So that's my answer. I don't know.
Okay. Well, when it comes to, we all learn our gear, need to learn our gear, look at the footnotes, regardless of camera system, very important. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, when I get a question in my videos later, I have to go to the manual because because it's a very specific use case. And I'm like, oh, there's something in the footnote that explains why it's doing this, right?
Yes. Yep. 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 Yep.
But getting out and practicing those, once you've kind of gone through sort of the academic side of your camera and learning all the different features, functions, going out and practicing those features talked about. But I wanted to kind of segue into, when you go out and practice, uh, I feel like when I started, and I'm still a beginner really, going out and doing wildlife photography or birding, one of the biggest challenges I had was finding different kinds of location to go to. I know going back to the same spot over and over again, some places are very reliable. Go there and you'll always get something. One day it might be an otter. Next day it might be like a spoonbill. The next day it might be just a blue heron, right? I mean, but you won't see the same thing twice. And I'm very lucky I have a local pond that's kind of like that. But if you wanted to give some advice to people on how to find location, what tools do you use, or how do you find new location? Go shoot wildlife. Yes, Emilie, how about you?
I was going to say, follow the screams from last time.
Follow the
You have
screens.
you have to watch the live we did a couple of weeks ago to understand this one. No, but just be part. So you have local clubs. Like, I'm part of a birding group in Concord, New Hampshire. So that's a great way for me to get more knowledgeable, share with others. And smiling also help with your camera, because people are going to stop and ask you, oh, this is a friendly person, oh, this is a telephoto lens. Telephoto lens are basically like walking a dog, because people will stop to pet your dog, but when they see you with a telephoto lens, they will stop and ask you what you're photographing, and then they will share information. So just being friendly with people and showing them what you're doing, so they're understanding that you're not photographing through their windows, you're photographing that bird on the tree, and then they will probably share information with you. Oh, this, I saw about Al 2 days ago over there, or oh, have you heard of this rare bird that just came in? So that's one thing that I would recommend, just talking to other people, just being part of a birding group as well has been really, really helpful, and camera club as well, because you go out and you share information also with the people who are part of your club.
That's true, because when I think back, the best locations I've ever gotten, people that I said, hey, have you been to this place? And I said, actually, no, never heard of it. They'll give me sometimes I'll give them my phone and they'll just pinpoint it on the map for me. But yeah, definitely asking people, camera clubs, I guess the birding societies, what do they call them? Autobahn?
Audubon, or maybe you have local like group that also meet in your village. I would recommend that as well, because that's the best way, because it's going to take you to places that might be a little bit more remote, might be not as well known. So to me, that's a more enjoyable experience, that, hey, this is the bird at the local cemetery that everybody is harassing, and I don't want to be part of it. Like, I have no interest shooting the bird that everybody is taking photos of and stressing. I think that's not good. We want to be ethical photographers as well, especially if you're a birder. So I prefer to go in locations that might not be as packed. To me, it's a more enjoyable experience than being out there with 50 other photographers. Sure, if there is a bird that I've never seen, I'm really interested, I'm going to stop by and take a look, but I'm not going to spend many minutes on that location, because I don't want to be part of the problem.
Yeah,
I
I
definitely
think when it
respect
comes,
your environment. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lee.
no, go ahead, Rob. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say definitely, respect location.
Yeah, yeah. I will tell you this when it comes to finding locations. So I bet if we followed 80 different amateur, beginning, maybe even slightly advanced amateur photographers, most drive up to a location. Maybe it's Yellowstone, maybe it's a wildlife refuge, maybe it's a nearby beach, whatever it is. And they get out of their car and they just walk to a spot and they start photographing stuff, right? With no regard to wind direction, background, lighting, light quality, light direction, all these other elements, right? So what I think works best is to become a great naturalist. If you really want to be able to identify your own photography spots, you got to become somewhat of a naturalist. For example, macro out in West Texas, right? Most people think spring. Spring is not good in West Texas because our rains come in late summer. So for me, where I live, August, October, primo macro. I can find other subjects other time of year if we have some winter rains, but knowing that means most of my macro photography is going to occur late summer, early fall in West Texas, right? Whereas if I'm up in Wisconsin and I want to do dragonflies, well, I know it's going to be generally earlier in the year. Becoming a naturalist, knowing bird behavior, knowing that a lot of birds are going to molt after breeding season, they're going to look like crap. They'll look more like me than somebody else. They're missing primaries and secondaries, or their tail feathers are all ratty. So there's certain birds that we may not want to photograph. I love turkey vultures. They're great practice for photographers. And I'll tell people that and they'll take 3 shots and then walk away. And I'm like, yeah, well, your photography is probably not going to be getting a whole lot better anytime soon, right? Because if you master exposing a turkey vulture with the deep black, the whites, the bright bill at any light, then now we can start working on smaller birds in flight, right? So, learn how to be a naturalist, but also learn to read. Having been a birder in a bird photography, birders are often not good sources of photography spots. I was doing a workshop at McGee Marsh up in Ohio last year, which is, my God, way too many people for me. I won't be doing that one myself up there again. But the a birder behind us, I had a couple of really good subjects for my clients, and they go, "We've got a black Burnian real close." So I backed everybody up. Well, the bird was 35, 40 feet up in the tree. A birder's definition of close and my definition of close are not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I often have clients who will go down and talk to somebody and they'll say, "Oh my God, they had this and that." I said, "Did you ask them when?" "No." "Well, how long ago?" "Oh, I don't know." Well, so what? I mean, that's meaningless. So when you're asking people for photographic advice, well, what are the predominant winds? I have spots on the Texas coast I love going to. If I wake up in the morning, walk out of the hotel, and I know the wind directions in a different direction, I won't even go to that location because the sun and the wind are not going to work that day for what I might be wanting to shoot. Or I might have to change. Well, maybe I'll do some rim light, backlit stuff, or whatever it might be. So it's so much more than just someone saying, "Oh, you should go drive the Lamar Valley in winter in Yellowstone." And there are people who do it on their own. Now, I've been doing it 7 years. I did 4 trips this year. I know what cliffs to look for certain things on, right? Now, you can follow the crowd, but oftentimes there's no parking when there's a crowd. There's, other challenges, So learning to master an area and read it for photographic potential rather than just looking at eBird and go, "This bird's been," but are those birds tame? In Albuquerque, New Mexico, there's some ponds downtown where the waterfowl is just like, "Hey man, whatever," they'll hang right there, and in fall you get some beautiful color on the water, and it's just bam. In Newfoundland at Quiddy Vitty Lake, there are northern pintail. In Texas, you can't get close to northern pintail. There, I walked over, picked one up, handed it to my wife, and said, "Hey, babe, when I tell you, let it go." I mean, they're so calm, they're so tame because the locals feed them there. Okay, so learning birds that are habituated to people, and even learning the difference between a cooperative subject and a non-cooperative subject when they're the same species. Learn to read animal behavior, and they will tell you whether or not they're comfortable with what's going on. And if they're not, just wait for another one. It's okay to say, "I can't get this picture."
Yeah, and that's one of my challenges is because I've run across that where, like, some locations, the ducks, if they just see you a mile away, they're gone. Then other locations, like, they're coming up to you. "You got any food? Got any food?"
Yes,
I'm like,
yes,
wow, it's like my 300 millimeter was too long because they were just walking right up to me.
yes, yes.
But then there was a local at one of these sites. They're not a photographer, but they "Oh yeah, go down over here and go over here, try these different locations." Like you said, a lot of times they may not be ideal for a photographer because, yeah, there's the bird there, but they're behind this bush.
Yes,
What you're not going to get a picture of that bird. But then sometimes you get lucky and say, "Oh, great."
Knowing where a rookery is awesome, but
Right.
can you get at the right angle in the light? Are the bird's nest visible? I mean, there's so many different factors that you really have to learn the right questions to ask or the right things to look for. Okay. And so knowing, like, for example, in Florida, we happened to we were going to do snail kites. We did nesting osprey, nesting snail kites. We hit right when the snail kites were starting to get on the nest. So we saw a lot, but they were often collecting material and going to the nest instead of out foraging for snails as much. So, but the osprey were right in the thick of courtship. And I mean, I think one day on 50 frames per second, I probably took 10,000 images. We had all kinds of behavior. So even knowing, like, snail kites can nest at almost any time of year, so it's more unpredictable, but that as a naturalist, and you just know that's a possibility. So not all birds are alike, not all mammals are alike, not all insects are alike, right? And like, one thing I like to teach people is, if you see a bird preening or consuming prey, it's occupied. Take 3 steps and get a little closer. And then if it looks up, you stop, take some shots, right? So learning fieldcraft is very important. Fieldcraft and deciding where to photograph go hand in hand.
Now, fieldcraft, are you referring that's a skill set versus when I think of fieldcraft, I think of like a little canoe or something?
Yeah. No, when I talk about fieldcraft, I think this is the least talked about topic in nature photography. In fact, I dare someone to go find a photography book that hardly addresses it. If I weren't so busy in the field, I got an outline for a book, and I'm never home to write it.
should.
Yeah, well, I know I should, but hell, you got to be home at least a little bit, you know. So, Fieldcraft is learning to read locations, subjects, opportunities, anticipating behavior, anticipating and reading weather, okay, and knowing how and when to work a scene, okay. There are so many nature photographers who have almost no fieldcraft. Okay, in Yellowstone the other day, I have some awesome pictures. We had these 3 moose out, and 2 of them still had their racks, which was really unusual. And 5 photographers, and I don't know their names, so I won't call them out about how I felt bad for them. They're all in their white camo. They got their giant lenses with their tripods, and they decide to walk out in the deep snow towards the moose. And while moose have that goofy looking appearance, you will be hard pressed to find a hoof mammal that's more in tune with what's going on, right? So 5 guys trying to approach a moose through the open in snow, it's not going to work. Well, I had my clients along the road, and I said, these guys are going to bump these moose. And for people who don't know bumping, I grew up hunting. I'm from Texas. If that offends you, you'll get over it. And if you don't, I don't care. But bumping is a hunting term where you bump animals off. And photographers do this all the time, okay? So if you'll be patient and wait and let an animal come to you or a subject come to you, you'll always get a better shot. You are always going to get a better shot than when you bump it and you get a butt shot, right? So these guys are walking out. I told them these guys are going to bring these moose to us. So the moose start interacting with each other, and they start coming towards us to where it's just frame filling. And I actually have a picture of one of the moose running, probably running away from the guys. And the guys are in the background, and the moose is running, and they're all carrying their cameras and their tripod because they didn't get a shot because they didn't have good fieldcraft. Okay. So fieldcraft is a lifelong process of learning and learning how to read animal behavior, insect behavior, right? Tiger beetles. Tiger beetles are one of my favorite subjects, and they move so fast that when they stop, their eyesight that basically they lose their vision and then they gain it again. That's how fast these guys move. And you have to learn how to kneel under control very slowly and work a tiger beetle very differently than you would most other species of beetles, okay? Or knowing that you shouldn't touch a certain beetle because it's going to play dead, legs up, and it's not going to have a good pose for 10 or 15 minutes, right? So mastering fieldcraft is sometimes about just waiting and observing and knowing when an animal is going to do something. You know, in Brazil, we had mating jaguars. The female went down to get a drink, and I looked at the male, and honest to God, and many of us just felt he you know how when a cat or a dog knows it's about to get something, and it did this because most people probably aren't aware, sex is very painful for cats. They have a forked, and it's very painful, right? I guarantee you probably most people on this chat are like, I didn't know that. Well, now you do, right? So it's not pleasurable for the female jaguar. So she's coming back to get a drink, and I see him do this, and I said, guys, get on the male. So she walks up, the ears go back, which, right, if you know even a house cat, you know that, and she suddenly rotates, comes up, and just smacks him across the face. Well, I got some shots of her turned upside down just before she smacks him because I read the animal behavior. That's fieldcraft, okay? And that's where books on animal behavior, insect behavior, reptile, amphibian behavior, weather, you know, if you're a landscape photographer, macro, knowing how and when certain things operate is, if you've got dragonflies flying and foraging, they're not going to perch much. Certain darners, if they're foraging, they just go. So move on for another subject, right?
This may be a little bit too specific, but is there any certain publisher or author or group of books that are better than others? Or
Yeah. Field guides are no longer really good for a lot of behavior because the publishers have tried to put so many species that over time behavior gets pushed out. There's an older 3-part series from Audubon that goes more into bird behavior, but David Sibley has a book on bird behavior that's outstanding. Insect behavior written by what is the name of that field guide? There's a reptile and amphibian behavior, insect behavior, and I think even mammal behavior book. If you'll do searching on the behavior, that's what will separate it from a typical field guide. There was a day where field guides had good behavior, but they don't anymore because they just have they're
Okay.
so
So look for
focused on
books on behavior.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Yep.
That David Sibling was one.
David Sibley for birds. I cannot remember the authors. I've got them. I can even see the cover. They're kind of tan with I think the headlines in a red. Those are good. So let's say you're going to go to Yellowstone and you'd really like to try to get a picture of a river otter. Okay. We'll read the behavior so that you'll know it'll improve your odds of knowing when you might have a good photographic anticipation, right? Anticipating the shot is how you capture great things. You want to be proactive more so than reactive.
Yeah, and sometimes also take a break, look and observe the animal. If you want to take a photo of like the little bird, it's probably going to come and fly back right at this on the same branch from time to time. It's going from one location to feed and going back to that branch, like the hummingbirds. So you know where to look and when to get them, or learn about human behaviors, because you might see all those photographers, they're looking at that bird has been hunting from left to right. Don't go with all the photographers, just position yourself to the right, and you're going to get that bird flying to you, and you're going to be the only one there because all the photographers are right there on the bird. They're not going to get the shot of the bird flying close to you. So yeah, that's so important. And I think sometimes people are so excited, they get their tripod, they start shooting, and it's like, well, take 5 minutes, see what's going on in the field, try to understand what the animal is doing, and also try not to shoot with a tripod if you can. That's what I shoot with OM system, because I want to be flexible, and the people with the tripod, most of the time you don't see them moving very much, and that's a disadvantage to their photography. I'm there, I'm looking at different angles, I'm moving around my subject and finding the best location, and that location is going to change because my subject is going to move. So if you can, yeah, just no tripod. It's been a dream shooting with no tripod.
Yeah,
that's something I wanted to get into was with our OM system cameras, what lenses or camera settings, and also I wanted to talk about differences, tripods and monopods and gimbals. So how would you break it down? Like, I'm going to go do birding today, or I'm going to go shoot buffalo, or, I don't know that the gear is all that much different for these different kinds of photography, or, because it's just not my area. If I'm going to go birding, it's just simply my camera with the lens, right? I don't need the monopod tripod because I can be very agile and go spot to spot, like you said.
Yeah.
Is there a
For
place
me,
for like tripods and monopods or gimbals and things like that? Or
for me, there is. So, for example, if I do owl photography and screech owl, they're going to be later, then yes, I will need to do a very slow shutter speed to get anything because it's dark. So then, yes, that's when I will bring my tripod. I might bring a monopod if I know I'm going to spend a lot of hours just waiting for that one bird. So it's a little easier on me. But then when the bird is here, I'm out. My gear is so light, I really can't justify just keeping any tripod when I do bird photography or wildlife. And keeping it simple, I think it's key for me. For my type of photography, for who I am, I have my camera, I have the 150-400, and most of the time that's it. I try to keep it simple and work with what I have, and it's been working well so far. So yes, tripod, I have one in my car all the time. I don't use it very often because most of the time I don't need to have a tripod with me. I don't know, Lee. I know you use tripods probably more than I do.
For wildlife photography, I don't use a tripod at all anymore.
Mhm.
Now I've successfully handheld the 150 to 400 at 1/4 of a second.
Yeah.
Of course, the bird wasn't moving, and we're not going to do that much. I was playing around to see what I could accomplish. For macro, I never use it anymore with the OM system. I did back in the day. There's an exception, and my favorite dragonfly, damselfly setup is this: the 150 to 400 with on-camera flash. For dragonfly and damselfly photography, getting the flash for big damselflies, getting the flash off camera is not that important. So I will sometimes, because I'm using such a slow shutter speed with flash on that, I'll often go ahead and use a monopod or a tripod. Plus, if you get a real cooperative dragonfly, I often like to shoot vertical. It just helps over time because you're moving slower, right? So the more slow and steady. Now, am I saying I don't? Yeah, that's right. I give a thumbs up. I don't know why my camera does that. It's funny. So yes, for that, I will occasionally go with a monopod. One of the reasons I moved to OM system, when I shot Canon, I used a tripod 100% of the time with my big 600. I see people hand holding it and all that. Great, rock on, have a ball. But the biggest difference when I shot Canon and the quality of my images was a tripod or no tripod. And I'm not a small guy. I mean, I'm Scott. We don't run marathons. We throw telephone poles and crap, right? So, I would encourage people, though, as they get older. Okay. A lot of my clients are older. I'm 55 and I'm often the young guy, right? Most people overestimate their ability to handhold, just plain and simple. Most people overestimate that, and they refuse to go with a high enough ISO because they've never taken the time to learn how to properly post process. They don't know about exposing to the right. Their image isn't sharp to start, so their shutter speeds are too slow. If you know that you really aren't going to be able to hand hold, that's even more important. For older folks that get the new 150 to 600, I think a monopod is going to come in helpful because remember, it's not an internal zoom, right? So it's getting longer. And for me, it wasn't as heavy as I anticipated it to be. But when you zoom it out, if you don't have a built-in BG10, and all of my wildlife cameras have, I always use a battery grip because I always want two cameras, and I shoot vertical a lot. Another saying, vertical subject often warrants a vertical composition. And for me, this is usually not comfortable. Now, my macro bodies, I don't put one because I can hand hold this without it, no problem, with a flash, and it's fine. And I used to always have a battery grip. When we had our OM system ambassador meeting and they were introducing the OM1, within 10 seconds, I was pissed because it didn't have a built-in battery grip. And within 5 minutes, I was glad it didn't. I was like, okay, I'm wrong. I was wrong. You proved me right. I'm glad it's separate. So that for me is my advice. As you get older, no matter how light our gear is, you may need to use a monopod. The key is, okay, oh gosh, here we go. When you buy camera gear, if you go in and say, I want a light, compact, cheap monopod, the camera store salesman is going to sell you that. Ask and answer the right questions. I'm going to do a video at some point on how to buy gear because most people don't know how to buy gear well. They come out with these, they have $10,000 worth of gear and they put it on a $120 tripod that I wouldn't trust for anything. So invest money in a good quality. If you're going to use it, by God, don't go buy an $80 tripod to hold $10,000 worth of gear. That formula really isn't adding up. Okay. And I'm brutal on tripods. I test them. I have a thing for them. I never get rid of them. So I always have two in my truck, but like Emilie, other than for landscape and night sky and only for extremely long, exposures and stuff, am I using them? I really don't like to use it anymore. But for some people, it might be quite necessary.
That makes perfect sense. Definitely, you have to have a lot, you need a lot of patience in wildlife, any kind of photography sometimes, macro. But having a monopod can extend your time there so you're more comfortable.
Mhm.
That's it. I like how you said that. It's about extending your time. In the Galapagos, we're waiting on the marine iguanas to expel the salt from their nostrils and using pro capture, right? Well, sometimes you just pick one and you just hold it there and you're waiting. And man, I see people, they often quit, even if they're OM system shooters, because their arms get tired. And that monopod, as you just said, it's going to buy you time. That's right.
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely, it's something I do enough of myself. I never thought about using like monopods for like, dragonfly stuff, but that makes a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just because so because I'm using a flash, I'm not I'm not taking a ton of shots. And as you know, when you're even with that big lens, when we're in macro, and Emilie, does a lot of macro too, we're dealing with minute changes in focus, right? And so I don't get shy. I tell people, a lot of people want, they'll take 30 shots and say, I got that. And I'm like, there's no bonus points for brevity in photography. Nobody ever says, well, I got that shot in 30 shots. Well, I got that shot in 10 shots. Well, I got that shot in 2 shots. Ooh, you're the winner. Nobody ever cares. Right. So I'm going to take multiple images, even with flash, and because I know that my depth of field can vary ever so slightly on that subject, and I want to make sure, if I'm in the Amazon and it's humid and I'm sweating like crazy, and I'm dealing with mosquito bites, by God, I want to come home with the shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one thing is for the monopod, what I like is I have a monopod from Free Legged Thing, and I can add some legs to it. So I have in my more stabilization. I'm actually using it right now because I have my OM1 Mark II that I use as my webcam, and it's on my monopod with the free legs. They call
yes.
that Dogsy. So it's even more stabilization for you. So
Yep, I have one of those. Not that brand, but Emily, what I want you to do is you can queue up a few images. I'd like to show some images you guys have
yeah.
taken. And Lee, I wanted to ask you about that rotating collar you had on your other camera. I know Emily's talked about this, but which one
Yes.
is that?
If you look closely or you do some testing, you can find Emily's DNA on this one, because I literally she
You got it out of the box this morning?
from Emilie Talpin to Lee Hoy. Yes. I just want to give it a shot because I love my tripod is the Photo Pro E6L, and Emily's selling hers, but she doesn't do like night sky yet. I'll work on her, and then she'll regret selling that now. And landscape stuff. And because of the way it has a built-in gimbal, which is phenomenal, but for landscape photography, there's the way certain cameras fit can be a little more challenging. And I think this right here is going to solve my problem with that. So the tripod I like has a built-in leveler. So you're not having to worry about level. It's so quick and so easy to set up in the dark, whatever. And I think this rotating collar is going to work better than an L lens. The only thing so far I've found that I'm not too thrilled about is how much room there is for my thick Scottish fingers between the edge here. But I have a strong grip, so I think I'll probably get over it, or I might even just put my fingers here and be able to hold it, no problem. But I think I'm going to like this because it's primarily going to be for tripod use and landscape night sky. I know Nisi does one. Emilie, what was the brand on this one?
It's the Atoll. And so they don't recommend using this with OM system anymore because of that issue where if you have very small finger, it might work, but otherwise. So they used to sell it for OM system. They don't sell it for OM system anymore. And I was not using it much. Now I use the L brackets. And so Lee, I thought give it a go. It's better
Yeah.
to have it in use with someone than just accumulating dust on my shelf. But it's a
And
great
that
system.
grip probably won't affect me because normally when I'm doing landscape and night sky, the OM1 remote and the OM1 Mark II remote, that little $99 remote, everybody's like, oh, I'll go get a cheap off-brand one. It doesn't have nearly the range. This pairs every single time. My God, if you're ever out in the field trying to pair crap and it won't, that's when I just want to throw crap. People say, do you use your phone with your phone? No, it takes a ton of battery power. I hate dealing with all that. I hate dealing with my phone for those kind of things. So, for me, I think this will probably work well for me, but I do see the limitation on the side there. I don't know if the Nisi brand ones have a little more room there. I haven't tried one yet. Hopefully I will.
The challenge is, because I have one of those too, but a different brand. You can get the smaller rings so that you have more room for your fingers, but then the lenses won't fit because it's too small, the diameter.
Yeah.
So you might, it's kind of a niche product for OM systems, right? Something
Yes,
that
yeah,
it
That's
might be
true.
perfect for something, but for a lot of things,
that's right. I get people going, well, yeah, and they'll say, well, they'll talk about money or things. I'm like, look, photography is nothing but money and time. Those are
True.
the two elements of
right,
photography. So,
right,
but the whole saying we say, buy the best you can first. That doesn't always mean the most expensive. Like my favorite memory cards are some of the cheapest ones, the ProMaster Rugged. They got rid of the
yes,
stupid switch on the side. Man, I put them through the washing machine, the dryer multiple times. I just have great luck with them, and they're very affordable, and they're very fast. So yeah, it doesn't always, the best is not always the most expensive. Okay,
right,
that's not always true.
right. Okay, Emily, why don't we queue up your images, and then Lee, if you could put a few together. I just wanted
Okay.
to go through some and share with people. As you said at the very beginning, look at people's photography. Look at
Yes.
their photos. Um, I have your screen up
That's the
now.
one.
So
Yes.
why don't
Sorry,
you
I
go
have
ahead
to.
and you can go through these and narrate a little bit, and then we'll move on to Lee.
Yeah, so this one is a little plover, and we talked a lot about, being flexible. And I took a shot. I should actually posted another shot of it. It's a nice shot, but all I had to do was going around the plover to get the bokeh and that light early morning. And again, one of the questions is how can I get great images? Well, make sure that you're going at the right time. So golden light is perfect time. This one is a snowy owl, so I talk a lot about ethic photography. This snowy owl just flew next to me, so I took my shot and then I left. I try not to spend too much time, especially with the owls. There's more and more photographers in the field that are just spending, I think, a little too much time with those guys, and that's not good for their health. So I tried not to spend too long with them. And then we talk a lot about being able to get the shot and be ready for the shot. I practice a lot with goals. And so then when something like this, so that's a bald eagle who was catching a fish, and you can see all the cormorants. Those cormorants are always that's a local river in New Hampshire. They're always ready to get the fish from the eagles, the heron. So they're very fun to observe, or the gulls. And here there's nothing they could do. That bald eagle came. It was a fraction of a second. I heard a splash. I knew something was happening. I turned my camera and I started shooting, and I got that shot. But I would not have gotten that shot if I had not practiced on the goals. So it's all really about practicing your shots. Um, and then I do like intimate portrait, and I think that's something that I learned with macro photography is look for details as well. Yes, you have those great action shots, but how about intimate portrait? How about looking for lines? How about looking for the different patterns, the colors? So this one was a northern garnet in Canada. Actually, that's the second largest colonies of garnet in Northern America, and it was fantastic to spend time with them. So this is a very relaxing, peaceful photo. But if you go and spend time with that colony, it smells so bad. It's nothing but relaxing. The noise level is insane. But isolating a subject really, helped here. And that blue eye, those eyes are just gorgeous. And then we talked a little bit about most of the time, most of my wildlife is going to be without a tripod or a monopod, but for this type of photography, for photographing owls at dusk, then yes, I will definitely bring my tripod or my monopod with me because I'm going to do a longer exposure. And if the owl is not moving, then that will give me really the best exposure and the best shot I can. And we talked a little bit about going back to the location. So this might not be the best image, but because it was quite far and it's a really heavy crop on my OM1. So this one is taken with the OM1 and the 150-400. It is a hawk with a king bird, and that was 3 years walking on the same pond, and that hawk was here being attacked by the kingbird. But what's special about this photo is that you can see the red flare on the kingbird, which is quite rare to photograph. So I was very, very happy. I actually didn't even know it was a kingbird. I had a friend of mine who is an excellent birder who said, no, that's a kingbird with a red flare. So that was a special moment. So even if it's, maybe not the most perfect photograph, it's still very important. It's one of my favorite photographs because that was 1 week before I moved up to the woods, to the mountain of New Hampshire, and I left my local New Hampshire pond in Concord, and that's kind of like the last gift that I got from that
Wow.
pond. So
3 years
yeah,
in the making, and then almost didn't.
I know.
Might have been never.
Might have been
Wow.
never. Yeah, so just, going back every day with my camera, walking. And then I started to do a little bit more landscape photography, and especially because of live ND, which I love. And that's what I love about the OM system camera is I feel like I have all the tools I want. I don't need to carry ND filters. If I'm walking and then I see a waterfall, then I can smooth the water using live ND. So I've started to do that. Or live composite is also something that's just so fun, because photography, as I said, it's really for me all about having fun. Here it's a spot it's in the basin on the notch in New Hampshire, in the mountains of New Hampshire. I know this place because all the leaves are doing a swirl, and it's just using live comp and being, creative. And here I'm using a tripod for this. And I can see the photo being created, and I can stop it when I want to stop it. It's just fantastic. I think we are really lucky to be photographers in our day and age because of all the tools we have. They're more like they're cameras/computers. And again, that one is shot here on the Kank. It's a famous road in New Hampshire. A lot of waterfalls. We had so much water. So it's been perfect for me to practice my landscape a little bit. And then macro is really my true passion. That's how I started. I do a lot of refraction. So here, that's a dandelion clock. It's shot with the 60mm macro, and what was it? EM1, OMD M1 Mark III, I think this one, or Mark II. So just a drop of water on a dandelion clock, and it's refracting the daisy that's behind. It's a lot of patience to do those shots, but it's just so fun. And this one is the one that actually Lee picked when I did the competition with OM System. So just a ladybug refracting. You have the refraction with all the water drops. Those are hours and hours spent. I cannot control the ladybug where it's going. So as Lee said, you have to take a lot of shots, not just one or two, right? Erase them if it doesn't work. But for macro, I might, shot 500 images and be happy with two. And that's a great crop for me. And that's just how it is. You just take as many shots and see which one works the best. And then in the winter, you might not have, subject, but you have your own images. So what I do is I use my iPad, I put my image on an iPad, and then that's basically the subject refracting on those water drops. So that's my own photo. Uh, and you want to make sure with refraction your subject is going to be inverted, so you will have to turn your photo upside down so that the refraction is correct. Here it worked to have the photo not inverted because it looks like the bee is upside down and walking on
That's a great
the
technique,
petal.
because we do that in portrait photography sometimes. We'll use the large, 80-inch TV monitor for backdrops.
Yes.
That's the same idea. You're just using your iPad or phone. Wow.
Exactly. If you don't have a flower this summer, just go and take a lot of photos of flowers and then use that as your backdrop. That's what's going to refract in your water drop. So this one is just, with a little pen, Crayola, and then it's all about having fun. It looks like the Sesame Street, the Cookie Monster.
Yeah.
So same, it's just refraction and just being creative. There's so many different things you can do with refraction,
Yeah.
and this
And
one is
you just
probably.
use like a syringe, right, to kind of drop the water?
I have my syringe. This one is made with a syringe. You can use a sprayer, but then you don't have controls of where the drops are going.
And
So for
do you
this
just
one,
use water or just
water.
use,
So some people use a mix of water and glycerin. I am extremely clumsy. I tried it once. I ended up spilling everything. It was a mess. I don't like it. I just no. So just it's water, and it will disappear faster than with the glycerin mix. But you know what? If it disappears faster, that means that I will have to recreate something. So it pushes me to be more creative and to continue trying different angles and different shots. So that's pure water. And I
I'd
place
go further and say use spring water. So it has the least impact on whatever you're dropping it
true.
on.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. And then I do a lot of wildlife as well. So I did a whole series for OM system on beavers at my local pond, which was fantastic. I just observing them. They're absolutely stunning creature. There's actually a great book, Beaverland. I highly recommend this book. Fascinating about the history of the beavers and how the history of the beavers is deeply linked to American history. Um, and here again, knowing when to go again, you're gonna get better shots if I shoot all day, because I can do black and white if the sun is a little, too bright. But the best light is really gonna be that, early morning or before sunset. So those are a couple of shots that I wanted to share with you, and I'm
Those
gonna
were
stop
awesome.
sharing.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having those ready for us and share, because I knew you
Yeah.
had some amazing images there for all of us. I wanted to be sure that people saw that. Definitely check out your YouTube channel, for I'm sorry, also the links down below to your social media so people can know how to get in touch with you. So you can help them, expand their
I will
photography into
definitely do
something
that.
like this because it's really amazing. Okay,
Thank you
Lee,
so much.
let's see what I have, what you have for us. Wow, look at
Okay.
this.
So when people ask me why I shoot at 50 frames per second, this image is one example. I had probably somewhere between 50 and 100 images of this cattle tyrant sitting on a capybara. But what I had was a lot of choices where the fly was in focus because this cattle tyrant is trying to catch this bug. And so I had plenty of choices of where the fly was sharp, and then I could pick the one where I liked the location of the fly better. And I know a lot of people would say, "Oh, come on, do you really have multiples of the fly in focus?" Yeah, I mean the fly's buzzing around the head of the capybara, and no, I really do. And I picked the one I like the most. This one finished, I think, in the top 250 of the Nampa contest, which
What
is about
kind of animal is that? I've never seen that before.
that's a capybara. That's the world's largest rodent found down in South America. So on our Brazil Pantanal workshop, they literally come up to our doors in our hotel room. If you go to like the Peruvian Amazon in the wet season, they're a lot harder to see, but these are up close and personal. So it gave me a good chance. But that image is why I knelt down. So many, if you're standing up, the background looks very different. I'm kneeling down. I'm shooting at eye level with this capybara, and I love this particular image. Right? Whoops, sorry, I'm not a big fan of Google Drive for a lot of reasons, but this is what I think would work best for this. Now, this image, I have a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't shoot OM at high ISOs." That is ISO 12,800, and the only thing that I've done is run it through DxO at the time, Pure Raw 3, Pure Raw 4, just came out. So that's not even been edited in Lightroom. That's just running it through DXR Pure Raw 3, noise reduction and sharp. People ask me about Topaz Photo AI, Lightroom Enhance. I tested all of them. I bought both on at least 20 images, and I felt that DxO Pure Raw 3 performed the best over and over again. Now, I talked about finding cooperative subjects, okay? The kingfishers in Brazil and the Pantanal, this is not cropped. And we were able to move the boat around with various light angles, background colors. I like this one because my background was dark. The shade was hitting the trees in the background. If I were further right, I had a green background, which was also pretty. But once you find a cooperative subject, this bird let us get, well, again, that's not cropped. When you find a subject that lets you work it, by God, work it, don't just photograph it. But I saw the light, this beautiful backlit light. I stood up in the boat. Nobody else even raised a camera. And this is one of my favorite shots of a caracara. You have all the detail in the rectrices. Those are the tail feathers in the primaries and the secondaries. This beautiful rim light, even the insects are backlit, and it helps it all stand out from that background. So
Right.
I've had people say, why are you photographing a grackle? And I like to say, well, I'm a professional wildlife photographer. I'm not a professional first time I've seen it, professional rare bird photographer. Remember, if you go to the right place on earth, most birds aren't that rare. So don't get wrapped up in what you're photographing necessarily as much as what kind of an image you can capture. Why you should shoot birds vertically in flight a lot of times. This Kukoi heron, this was also Brazil. I love two species images. And this is not cropped. Had I shot horizontal, it wouldn't be nearly as good an image. In the background is a greater rhea jumping up for these little berries that were on this tree. So what are the odds, right? Well, my formula for nature photography success is preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. Okay. So, was I lucky? Yes, but I had the right exposure. I was shooting vertically. Both these subjects are vertical in nature, and it warranted it. And if anybody doubts that that I didn't shoot it that way, I'd be happy to show the raw file. But so another thing I like to do is pay very close attention to my backgrounds. So sometimes being closer isn't better. Here in the Faroe Islands, I was standing in a particular location, and these puffins were coming out of their burrows, which you see the burrow there at the back, and flying along the cliff. Now, that's an okay shot. I don't particularly care for it. It's okay. For a lot of people, they might be happy with it, but it's kind of a boring shot. I mean, yes, it shows the environment and all that. But I started paying attention, and if puffins, they fly like a football, right? They just drop and then level out. And I realized if I backed up, the light would come over the cliff. They would have further separation, and it would be against the dark cliff, not the grass. And that's the image I got by actually backing up. So getting closer isn't always the answer, but paying attention to light angle, light direction, light quantity, your background will pay tremendous dividends. Okay. Other things I like to talk about, when it comes to macro is work a subject, right? So we go to Panama. In fact, Chris McGinnis, another OM system ambassador, and I are going to Panama. We go to this island where there's a tremendous number of morphs of Ophaga pumilio. This is a morph of the strawberry poison dart frog, and they come in all these different colors. Well, looking for contrast is gorgeous, okay? And so, again, sometimes when you're setting up shots, and in here we're actually arranging shots because you're not going to get shots like with this of dart frogs just running loose. They're too elusive. So how do you help bring out the uniqueness of a particular species? And sometimes it's using color. I saw a question earlier about shooting in black and white. Do I shoot in black and white or do I shoot in color? I always shoot in color because you're capturing more data. And then I'm not going to convert in Lightroom. I don't think Lightroom does the best. I think Silver Effects Pro in Nick Collection is best for black and white. But when I shoot an image, I know what images are going to go in black and white. So I don't shoot in black and white, but I shoot with the mindset of black and white. Okay. Sometimes you get subjects. Just the other day in Florida on the OM only one, a wood stork on the beach is kind of unusual. You know, you see them in swamps, so you don't often get a background with a wood stork portrait of crashing waves, which gives it this lovely pastel. And then the sand at the bottom, I think, complements the colors and the head of the wood stork beautifully. So this is not a wood stork portrait I'd normally get. So I kept telling my clients, guys, you know, get over here. You want to work this way. They walked towards it while I was looking at a fisherman's bucket. Well, who the hell wants a picture? I guess for comedic sake, right? But no, this is the beautiful shot. The pastels in the background all complement the colors in the wood stork beautifully. And I love one of my favorite portraits of a wood stork that I've had. I like Emilie mentioned earlier, I love to show the uniqueness of particular animals, right? And so in Zimbabwe and Zambia, you know, I had another guide from Wildside, and he does safaris. He photographs, but he can't teach photography. And he wanted to move to put the light on the right-hand side. I said, do not move the vehicle. This is the spot right here. This is going to give us the contrast. And I really wanted to emphasize the elephant's eye. He was thinking about showing the entire elephant. I'm like, no. The story is in the close-up because of the textures and the light and her ears. You know, she was waving her ears. So I took a bunch of shots because I wanted that stream of light just to hit right. So I have a ton of images that don't look that great because her ear was blocking the light, or the light wasn't right on the eye, or her eye was looking down, whatever. So again, being very particular. Just because a shot is sharp and properly exposed does not mean it doesn't suck. Okay. And a lot of people, they just get ecstatic if the shot is sharp or properly exposed. Well, congratulations. That's a great start, but it doesn't mean it's a visually compelling image. You know, even cockroaches can be beautiful. You know, people overlook a lot of great subjects, but this is a cockroach, but it's gorgeous. This was on my Costa Rica workshop, and I love that shot. I love the position, the angle, you know, and I use flash probably 95% of the time for my macro shots, but macro isn't always about necessarily being as close as possible. I saw this moth on a night walk in Costa Rica, and I loved the leaf, the texture of the leaves, and how it complemented this moth. And I think the placement in this image brings out a lot of the beauty in both the leaves and that particular moth. Okay. You know, here I couldn't get low enough. Whoops, hold on. Oh, I hate that when I tap my mouse. Just a second. So here I actually flipped the screen out on the OM1 with the 150 to 400. I rotated it vertically, leaving the foot of the lens on the rock, and the tip of my lens is just a few centimeters above the water to give you this perspective, like you're one of the cygnets, you know, with this whooper swan. So as low as you can go, you know, get much more powerful shots at eye level than looking down. Another 2-image shot, ISO 25,600 of this skimmer coming across a pond. Could I have placed a Yakari caiman where it is? No, but you know, I could only use silent sequential for 20 frames per second, and just, you know, again, got lucky with the placement of the subjects, but knowing how to expose a backlit subject like that came into play and helped out right there. You know, also watching your position and angles in macro. You don't always have to show the whole animal. Sometimes, you know, an animal peeking out, or you want to leave your viewer wanting more, you know, their eye going into the image and being curious sometimes. And I think this image with this clown tree frog in Costa Rica at night, you know, a lot of people don't like getting out at night. They get spooky, scared, or they're tired or whatever, but night is often the most productive for a lot of macro, particularly in tropical areas. I mentioned watching bird behavior. So this is in the Galapagos Islands. And if you see a frigate bird up high and suddenly it starts diving quick, that means it has seen a bird with prey that it wants to steal. So I would tell my clients, stay on them. And boom, this one came down. And I have a sequence of 10 or 12 shots of this frigate bird grabbing this tropic bird and upending it. I mean, it literally is grabbed the tail, is upending the tropic bird, and the tropic bird fairly quickly regurgitates the fish. The frigate bird gets a meal, and they both go on their way. So
Wow.
that's a few images. Let's see here. I'm sure I've got something else here that I can think about that
You're
I've been
definitely,
told.
yeah.
Yeah. So two species images. Could I have planned this shot? Absolutely not. But I just got back from Peru a few weeks ago. This is one of my favorite shots from there. The cormorant's beautiful. This is with the OM1 Mark II. And then I've got these gorgeous Inca terns, the water dripping. I love dark backgrounds, particularly for birds around water, because it shows off the water spots a lot better. So, I think those are some of the things that we've been talking about that I think, would be helpful to folks.
Yeah, definitely, as you were talking about the different animals and the different types of composition, mixing of color and light, this is where I feel like, having a mentor or doing the workshops, really, you can't get this information anywhere else.
Yeah, the thing about workshops, and I told this to my last group, 90% of clients don't ask enough questions. Okay. You're paying a lot of money to be there, and it's easy to get caught up in the moment. It's one reason why I started OM system only workshops. Because it can be difficult to say, now with your OM system, we're going to do lightning. All we have to do is live composite. Oh, if you're going to do this, we need to get your neutral density filter and yada, 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 and this and that. Because I really would challenge y'all, if any of y'all out there watching this today and you take a workshop, whether it be with me, Emily, Rob, whoever does workshops, you're paying for that experience, and make sure it's chock full of questions, because that's the only way I know how to learn, right? And I get frustrated if I hear clients say, I'm sorry, I have a question. Why are you sorry? We're passionate about what we do. Love teaching. I get just as excited about a client who told me, like yesterday when we wrapped up the Florida one, she said, I've never taken images like this. Well, I drove you like a madman and forced you to do things that you don't normally do. And I love hearing that feedback, right? So guys, if you're on a workshop or you're taking a class or whatever, ask questions. I'll also say most clients don't ask questions that I think are helpful. Here's a couple examples. I'm going to do a YouTube video on this coming up. Questions I wish my clients would ask, right? I've never been asked this. If we weren't here, what would you be shooting? Because what I'm shooting with a group of 8 people is not the same sometimes as what I'd be shooting by myself. I might walk out in the swamp, right? I might be laying down. I might be doing this. So you'll learn from what would you be doing if we weren't here? Sometimes the answer might be, I wouldn't be here. Y'all want to be here, but I wouldn't be here because this isn't this. Y'all want to stop to photograph this because it looks pleasing to the eye, but it's not going to translate well to an image. Okay. That happens a lot in landscape. Can we stop to get a picture? Sure. It's your tour, stop, pop out, man. We'll get you the shot, but here's a question I hear a lot. What are your settings? That is in a lot of ways irrelevant unless you say, okay, what focal length are you using, right? What are you trying to accomplish in the image? Not what are your settings, but what are your settings and why? Because when they say, what are your settings? They're just going to, you hear click, 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 right? And then you hear, wait, what were those again? Right. So the question should be not what are your settings, but what are your settings and why? What are you trying to accomplish in this scene? How are you going to compose this image? What is it you see? You don't hear those questions much. It's always, how can I get the shot you're about to get, which is fine. But what are you learning, right? How are you learning to see differently or think differently? And those are things that, for me, I think I would love to see people ask the right questions. And in fairness, sometimes you don't know what to ask. And that's why I would say, if you say somebody in the audience signed up to go on an African safari with somebody, before you leave the house, make a list of questions, because when you have that's my favorite mammal in the world. And I had my first opportunity. I'm kneeling down very close to a rhino with a calf, and you're just overwhelmed with emotion and experience and all that. The last thing you're going to think about is that question, right? Because you're just overwhelmed in the moment. So preparing yourself for a workshop would go a long ways towards maximizing your investment in that workshop.
Very good advice. you know, as somebody that might be thinking going to a workshop, a lot of times you feel a little intimidated because you're an absolute beginner. You don't want to look, you don't want to ask dumb questions, right? But there's
Yeah,
no dumb question. Just ask. Don't be afraid to ask anything.
no. Any
Lee will tell
workshop
you if it's a
leader.
dumb question.
Well, you know what I like to jokingly say? There's no such thing as dumb questions. There's just dumb people who ask questions. No, I'm teasing. Folks. I'm teasing. I'm completely
Right.
teasing. I grew up with educators, so questions are the most powerful thing in the world, right? I mean, even Jesus mostly spoke in questions. So there's a reason questions are so powerful. Okay. You just have to contemplate the question before you ask it. I will tell you this: you ask any workshop leader who's good, okay, because there's a lot of crappy ones. I'm not going to throw any names, right? But there's a lot of crappy ones too. We love beginners, we love amateurs, we love whatever level of photographer you are. If you want to know the one we don't like, it's the one who comes up to us at a festival or whatever and goes, "Do you do any teaching on your workshops? Because I don't need it." My first thought is, I hope you never sign up for one of my workshops, because usually they show me their images, and my first thought is, you 100% confident in that statement? Now listen, I'm not sure you should be, because I have guys pass around images, and I thought, my God, that's a delete. I mean, that's just being honest. That person
Yeah.
isn't going to be good at anything, because I buy classes online at times. Sometimes I don't. Another person says something better. Emilie has a very different approach than I do in how she communicates. I mean, I wish I had her beautiful accent, because people would probably listen to me more anyways, right? But sometimes when you listen to how other people explain things, you go, you know what? I hadn't thought about it in that situation. So if you tell me you don't need any teaching, you don't need any help, you got it. I hate to say this, you're useless in terms of your future achievements. I'm not saying you may not be a good photographer, but those aren't people I generally like to have in my life. Uh, the best way to be a great photographer is to be a constant learner. I can always learn from other people. I learned a lot helping on a PBS Nature special for Big Ben. Watching a cinematographer, I was like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought about that for my photography. So if you tell me you don't need any teaching, forget it. Your photography is done. I mean, you might get some great shots in there, but odds are you're not going to be someone that's going to be good on a workshop in general. So
What you're saying is, when I was looking at, as we were going through the images between you and Emilie, you can definitely see a difference in imagery, not because they're different subjects, but just the overall compositions and the sort of story that you're trying to tell. Emilie seemed to have like a more creative approach to some of her images that just created these things you would never think of. And then Lee, it's very clear you've mastered lighting, timing, and knowing your subject, and also the some interesting things like I never thought about. Yeah, two-speed images. Like, yeah, those are the best ones. I was looking from the ones you showed, those are the ones I like the most. It's like I never think about two species at a time. I always think about how am I going to get the best shot of this one, right? But definitely, it's a lot more interesting, and this translates into how you're going to teach and interact with people as well. I think
you
because
know what
when you look at, go ahead.
I would encourage people. Okay, a lot of times the images that get a lot of publicity, whatever, what I call field guide photography, and I do some of that. Okay, I do some of that. And I used to do a lot of it. I mean, I watched some of Arthur Morris's stuff back in the day and got heavily influenced by some people. But if you look, Arthur never photographed LeConte sparrow, right? Because they're not out in the open. I mean, most of what, and no disrespect to Arthur, I learned a lot shooting with a DSLR from Arthur. So I'm not disrespect. We all have different styles, but you never saw a LeConte sparrow. And then one day I started seeing some other photographers, and I'm like, you know what? There's a difference in field guide photography and wildlife photography as art. I enjoy both. But if you never move from one to the other, there are aspects that have benefits to each of them, right? So I would encourage you to, when you're looking through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and you see an image that inspires you, rather than just, move to the next one, stop and ask yourself, What is it about that image that inspires me? Why do I like that? Not so that you can replicate it, but so that over time you can hone your own photographic style. My personal passions and Emilie's are a little different, which is what makes the world unique, you know? And if you photograph me and you photograph Emilie, we're both human beings, at least thus far. I've been proving out that. Um, it's probably up for debate by some, but but look at, we would be very different subjects, right? I mean, if you capture an image of her without her smiling, you probably haven't really embraced who the Emilie I know. Whereas if I take a self portrait, I kind of like to give that, like I'm a real hard ass, which I'm not always, but I like to give that feeling, you know. Um, and the same is true for animals. Too often we say, oh, there's a black skimmer, but you know what? That individual black skimmer does not think of itself as a black skimmer. It thinks of itself as a unique individual in relation to other black skimmers, laughing gulls, dolphins, magnificent frigate birds, right? And if you can shift your dynamic, a phrase I hate hearing in the field is, oh, I need that. So now we're turning living organisms into a commodity. I don't like that. I don't like that phrase. Or, oh, I've shot that before. You may have photographed that species, but that, that particular individual is not that. You know what I mean? So if you can embrace a more living, dynamic aspect of your photographic subjects, I think your photography will also take a step forward.
Yeah, and every like a skimmer is a skimmer, but I also find out like photographing Listern that they have different personalities. Or beavers is the same, and you get to know them. So the more you go back and you get familiar with a specific individual, the better your story is going to be. I was photographing a stork colony in my village in France, and there was one particular individual who was the clumsiest stork I've ever seen. He would start landing with hair in his beak and miss his landing, hit the tree, fall on the nest. I mean, and those are things that you can use. Oh, this is the bird that's probably going to do this type of thing, and you start looking for those specific birds. So, yes, not all animals are the same. Not all beavers are the same. So start observing them, so you get a better story from them.
Just like my dogs. I've never had two dogs with the same personality,
Hmm.
No.
you know?
Exactly.
So that's that, yeah. Like I said, it's very obvious in images that you've shown, the very different approaches, sort of, I guess, imagery you're trying to capture. Definitely, definitely they were awesome. But what I like to do now is maybe kind of segue into some Q&A from the chat section. And also, I had some questions uh, from other places before the stream started. Me personally, I did have a question for you, Emilie, just for myself was, Olympus makes 3 macro lenses now, the 30, the
Mhm.
60, the 90.
I have them all
Uh,
here.
I
I
guess,
mean,
I wanted to ask you, let's say you have all 3 lenses like you do, right? When
I
do you
do.
use the 30 versus the 60 versus the 90? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't everybody, if you couldn't get the 90 all the time?
yeah.
Or maybe you should. I don't.
I'm on a budget, and that's going to be my go-to lens, right? You want to start with macro photography. You want to do some great close-up. That's the one I would get. I'm doing mushroom photography in the forest. I would use this one. I want something very small I put in my pocket. That's this one. I'm doing refraction. That could be this one if I'm on a budget. This one, the 60, is this is one of my favorite lens because it's so small. It's like a toy. When I take it out of my pocket, people are like, "You're kidding me, right? You're not going to shoot with this." In
Right.
my pocket, it's insane. It's a brilliant lens. I love it. Insect photography. I want something small. I have a little bit of a bigger budget. I want to do, I love this lens for portrait photography as well, which I'm not good at. I know, Rob, you're very good at portrait photography. This is the one that you should shoot with. I recommend this one for you. And then professional photographer. Yeah, that's the one. Like, that's the magnification. You can also autofocus. Uh, I just This give you the freedom of composition because you can decide of your composition. That's what I use the 90 millimeter macro. Yes, it's a bigger lens, but to me, it's worth to have in my bag now. I shoot mostly with the 90 millimeter macro now. So that's the one, and you have a bigger budget. That's the one you want. I love
And being a pro lens is stabilized and weather sealed.
weather sealed. Yes, I mean I never had any issue with the 60 or the 30. It's still great, but yes, you're right. This one is definitely more weather sealed, and it's a brilliant lens. I mean, you don't have a lens like this in any other systems. I mean, the magnification is just out of this world, and it gives
So,
me.
yeah, let me ask you, like, you talked about the 30 for doing like refraction, mushroom type stuff, so a little bit wider field of view, obviously.
Yes.
Can you do those things with, say, the 90? Because it's very tight, I would.
Yes, but at the same time, so you can do super macro, or so you have different option as well. I'm sorry, it's probably not going to focus. So you can also decide how you want to use this lens. So you can also use it for portraits. You can add teleconverter, and maybe you can even do some wildlife with it. That lens is just it's extremely flexible. That's why it's my go-to lens now. If I really I don't want to.
Do you take
It's
out your 30 and 60 much anymore, or they just stay at home most of the time?
no, not much. If I'm really going somewhere and I'm like, you know what, I know I'm not gonna do macro, but just in case, then just that's gonna be my just in case. Or I just
Okay.
want to go with something really light, and maybe I'll do my OM5, and then I know I'm gonna do mushrooms. Then that's gonna be the one instead of going with my longer and a little heavier macro lens. Then yes, I'm gonna use those, but I'm not gonna use them as much as my 90 millimeter macro. It's just for convenience. Although the 60 is such a brilliant lens, I really
There's
love
no
it.
reason not to get the 90.
No, there is no reason not to get the
Okay.
90.
Good to know. Good
Yeah.
to
I
know.
think, in my world.
One time you might consider taking the 60 out instead of the 90. I've got AK diffusers for both. Well, you got to remember with the 90 and your diffuser, you've got a bigger package. So if you're trying to work subjects up in foliage or you need a little reduced package, then the 60 then might be my preference over the 90. I love venomous snakes. Well, I'm going to love the 90 because it's giving me a little more safety,
Yeah.
right? For sensitive subjects that you might spook, that extra working distance is nice. But also, if you are trying to work up into things, that little bit of a smaller size in the 60 can be beneficial. What I'm ready for is a wide angle macro. I want something around 16 millimeters. That would give me autofocusing capability, but give me that nice big. I mean, the 30 is good, but it's still. I mean, we're still talking a 60, right? In terms of equivalency. So
Yeah.
I would really like a 16 35 millimeter equivalent true macro, and I've got the 8 1.8, but I want a true macro lens in that case, and that's one thing I'd love to see us come out with.
Yeah. Okay, so let me move on to a couple of your questions. One was, I guess I'll ask you about this one, Lee. It's about the AFC plus tracking on the new OM1 Mark II. You've had a couple of weeks with it. The tracking has that little green box.
Now, are they meaning it's tracking or subject detection?
No, tracking.
Okay.
The tracking.
Yeah. With subject detection, now on the OM1, I actually left tracking on against the advice of the engineers. Okay. On the OM1 Mark II, no, I turned it off. I found that I was having a little better luck without, because the subject detection is basically doing that anyways. I felt like I didn't see a problem with the OM1, and I felt like I got a little bump. And just in case I didn't mention this in my introduction, I'm OCD. Kevin says I'm CDO because it needs to be in alphabetical order. I'm a perfectionist, and I'm a control freak. So I don't like my camera. I know I'm smarter than my camera in most ways, but not when it comes to autofocus in terms of speed, right? But I know what settings to adjust. So for the OM1 Mark II, I recommend that you have tracking turned off. In the OM1, I still leave my tracking on. I know that sounds weird, but again, I am meticulous in what I watch and very, very observant in the results I get. And I have a pretty good idea on what I should be able to pick up, what the camera will pick up, where I have success. I have images that I take while our skiff is going full speed down a tributary in the Amazon with flying swallows and kingfishers. So I like pushing a camera to its limits, and I would not use tracking on the OM1 Mark II.
Okay. How about for like when you have subject detect turned off and you just want like a non-trained type subject, tracking those kinds of things, like maybe a, I don't know, a flower. I can't even think of, but you know what I'm getting at is like if you're trying to track something that is not in the subject detect menu, have you tried tracking things that way? The green box.
So I'm going to tell you about subject detection. Bird subject detection works really well on most reptiles, amphibians, even most mammals, and on a lot of insects. Compound eyes can start to be throwing it a little bit at times, like dragonfly eyes, but even then, sometimes it works. Okay. I find mammal detection doesn't work as well on mammals sometimes as birds. It's truly more been programmed for cats and dogs. So if you have something kind of close to that, but I have found I often have a little higher keeper rate with bird detection on mammals. I think we got to run a lot more mammal images through the training, through the algorithms to get it there. I mean, I'm sure it will. So truly, I have found that tracking will oftentimes even grab inanimate objects if they're distinct enough from the background. So I would feel pretty confident with a flower if I was using bird detection and it initially acquired it, that it might keep it. I don't normally do just flowers for flowers to try it. So someone might want to go play with that. But the quickest way to make these adjustments is the FN lever. Okay. So boy, there we go. It likes my thumbs up. So on the FN1 lever, I have subject detection programmed to my exposure compensation button, so I can turn it on and off quickly. FN1 is going to be on the OM1 and the OM1 Mark II for birds and wildlife. It's going to be the small box, not the tiny single point. That does not pick up enough contrast. It's too small for birds and wildlife. It's going to be the small box. And that is for moments where there might be branches or other animals that it's acquiring, and I want to acquire the subject. So then I'm going to use my joystick to move that small box to the head, and most likely leave subject detection on, because when you get it there, it'll stick it on. The key is if it looks away, let go and let the white box pop up. It's not a good image anyways, right? And then when it looks back at you, then press focus again. Okay. Then I flip on the OM1. I flip FN lever to position 2, and that is all autofocus points with CAF and subject detection. That's what I use the majority of the time. The OM1 Mark II, I don't use all. I use the large box for most wildlife settings. They recommend not using all. I really haven't had time to do a full-blown test of that. But that's my gut feeling, is the large might be working a little better than the all, only because it's so much faster. It's working more, and all autofocus points just gives it even more to try to work with.
Okay. Well, like I think you said, you're going to wait about 6 months before you really talk about, best settings and all of that for the OM1.
I won't do a full-blown review. I'll do first impressions on the Mark II. But, it's like I told you earlier, right? If you're dating someone and you give a review of them after 3 months, they've been on their best behavior. It takes a few months before you get to see everything about a person. And I don't think it's so when someone, like, oh God, people have heard, I'm going to get on a rant. I hate camera review websites because who the crap photographs focus charts? Who gives a crap about how it does on a focus chart? I know. But come stand on a skiff that's moving at 25 miles an hour, bracing yourself, and pick up a bird in flight. Now, by God, that's a test worth testing.
Yes.
Right? Because it may perform beautifully on a focus chart under controlled lighting, but that has nothing to do with real life photography unless you're photographing focus charts, which a lot of men age 20 to 40 do a lot of and then brag about. And then you look at their pictures like, buddy, you need to read a book on composition instead of focus charts.
Nice picture of the chart, but
Yeah, great picture on the chart. You nailed it, man. You nailed it, right? So these websites, they get a camera for a week.
Yeah.
That's useless. Ladies, you come date me for a week. I will be the best man you've ever dated. I promise. But then give it 3 months, you might be like, maybe Paul didn't so beautiful, right? So those things are just utterly useless unless you care about what f-stop is sharpest. My God. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got on my rant, didn't I? Oh, dear God. Yeah. You know what my tattoo says? Just shoot, right? Those are all meaningless out in the real world. They're all meaningless. Yeah. So until I've used a camera for 6 months in rain, in snow, in hot conditions, in a moving boat, standing still on a tripod, laying on the sand, I don't really know what I can tell you my first impressions, so I'm happy to talk about first impressions, but I can't give you hardcore definitive, this is absolutely the case, even after 2 weeks in Peru and in Florida, I mean, I've been in moist, humid conditions on boats, photographing. Right.
Okay. I wanted to expand on one or two things, but I wanted to ask, and maybe Emilie knows, another question I got is about the touch screen. Is the touch screen, like, and is it fully touch operational? Meaning, like, if you're in a menu, can you touch something in the menu? Go to that? Do you know? And it's kind of an odd.
I don't think so. I don't know because I'm so used to using, all
we
the.
just kind of navigate the buttons. Right?
I don't think you can. No, I don't think it's fully. Lee, Lee is the person. He read the manual. I don't think so.
All right. So here's what you do with the touch screen. You turn that stupid crap off. OFF off. Nobody's ever getting great wildlife images touching the back of a screen. My God, that is adorable in a studio and in marketing material. Turn it off. Your cheek can touch it. Your face can touch it. I actually watched a lady trying to do bird in flight on a touchscreen on a Sony camera at Bosque. I had to look away. It was just driving me nuts. Yeah. Look at this finger. How accurate do you think I'm going to be on the focus on there? Changing settings. It's a terrible. You're building terrible habits because you're not making fast changes. I'm talking wildlife photography. If all you do is landscape, you're fine, right?
Yeah.
But for anything macro, for wildlife, why build up a habit that's going to hurt you on other genres? Does that make sense?
Eyes aren't on the subject, right? They're on the screen.
Oh, Rob. Yes, Rob.
Is the person though asking about changing things in the menu and then clicking?
Yeah, they're asking about once you're in the menu, can you change things with the touch screen?
I'm pretty sure not.
Everything touch screen chooses to
be.
Yeah,
I know. I'm not a big fan of touch screens either.
You know what? Whoever asked that, look, this is, and I'm being serious now.
I'm trying now.
Work on developing the habits from the beginning that maximize. I'm driven by speed, accuracy, number of great images to choose from. So other people are motivated by other things and are probably going to give you a different answer. So you understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
Touchscreen has nothing to do with speed. It slows you down. Touchscreen has nothing to do with accuracy. And touchscreen is just about convenience. And the last thing great photography often is convenient. Fleas or sand fleas and 90-degree humidity are not convenient for me, but sometimes you get great images, So So I would prefer you practice changing your menu looking through the viewfinder just to build up the habit of being able to make changes through the viewfinder quicker. Okay.
Yep, you need to. I'm like a surgeon with that little D-pad. Let me tell you.
Oh man, I played video games for 40 something years and I thought I'd wasted a bunch of my life. Dude, do you know how beneficial that was for photography?
Yeah, yeah. Did you find out anything different there, Emily, on the menu?
No,
Did it
no.
touch?
So if they really want to change things on the menu, it's, the pad. That's how you
Okay.
run through
Okay,
things.
so
But
it hasn't changed. Okay.
no, I don't think so. And I don't have my OM1 Mark II is, I'm using it right now, so I can't check now on this one.
And I guess we haven't really talked about the video side at all. It's pretty much unchanged from the OM1 Mark I. But
That's
specifically,
correct.
someone was curious about the using the macro lenses for video. I don't know if you've done anything.
Actually, I haven't done any filming with my macro lenses. I should do more of this, but I haven't,
Okay.
so I can't really
Yeah,
give
because
you
you're
any
really close
pointers.
and you can get them walking along a leaf or something with the macro lens. That would be kind of interesting.
That's true. I do have
Or
one actually of a caterpillar going around a glass using my macro lens. So it does, but then, I mean, that's the problem with macro lenses, right? Your depth
I mean,
of
the only
field.
thing, actually, you have the lenses there. If you can look and see if it says MSC, the little MSC logo, it means movie still compatible, right?
I mean, it.
If it says MSC on it, then it should be fine for video.
See it. I know I shot videos. I think with the 60, I use it. So MSC, but I don't see it here. Why? That's a good
Sorry.
question. I know the 60 is, I shot videos with this one, but the 90, I don't see MSC on this one. I will try it and I will post it in the comment of the video later on.
Okay, sounds good.
If you don't know
And
it,
then
try it.
Lee, that someone was asking if you could sort of expand on why you use tracking on the OM1 and not the Mark II.
Good question. I see Kathy asked that, right? So the Mark II is so far, this is my first impression, is remarkably faster at attempting to acquire autofocus, but I'm not sure it's necessarily more accurate. I've been doing some playing with this. I have a gut feeling like that this sounds funny, that it's almost too fast. In other words, I'm trying to analyze, is autofocus so fast that it's like hyperactive almost, right? Like it's constantly looking. So I'm actually trying to slow down autofocus on the OM1 Mark II to improve accuracy. From Peru to Florida, I had better luck. Okay. So I normally shoot like in CAF sensitivity +1 or +2 with an OM1. I'm down around -1 or -2 with a Mark II. Look there. I tell you what, look at that. Okay, well, I found a new one. That's awesome. So on the OM1, leave the tracking on. I believe your accuracy is better. On the OM1 Mark II, so far, I turned tracking off, and I believe it's made my accuracy better. So I'm about speed and accuracy, and I tweak every single setting in autofocus. Most people only deal with 2 or 3 settings in autofocus, but if you look in our autofocus menu, it is chock full of things that impact your autofocus accuracy and speed. Okay. And knowing how they do that is critical. It's one of the reasons I do the mentorship program. So the OM1 with tracking, I just noticed it in that I had better luck maintaining. And I'm talking about images like where I capture a Darwin's finch in the Galapagos that's not taking off of a branch, but I just pick it up. Now, I hunted for a long time. I can get a bird at 1,000 millimeters in the frame very quickly, very accurate, as a result of things I've done all my life, playing sports, hunting. And I notice it picks it up faster and it sticks with it longer on the OM1. I have not found that to be the case on the OM1 Mark II. The autofocuses feel very different to me from one camera to the next, and I'm still adjusting to what's going to work best for what I like to shoot. Okay. What I like to shoot. So I suspect with SH2, with the OM1 increased speed, I'm pushing our cameras all the way to the max, right? If I bought a Lamborghini, I'm in top gear, running all out all the time, which most people don't do, but I do. Okay, so that's where I'm tweaking to find out what settings are going to be best for the average photographer as well as myself, and so I'm still working through that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
and that's
someone
important.
asked,
Is know your gear and know how you interact with your gear. My
yes,
response time may not be good enough for SH1 or SH2, so I always
right,
shoot just in regular continuous
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's just too fast for me in SH2
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. But I get questions. I get images of like wolves baring their teeth that at 20 frames per second you're not getting because I have more images to choose from. So that's what drives me. I noticed someone asked a question about rain covers.
Yeah.
Do I have a little video, Rob. I've shared my I've shared my screen with you and I'll turn the audio off. But this should answer the question. Can they see that?
Yeah, they should be able to see that.
Yeah. That is pretty close to a downpour. And I'm using, I think I have an OM1 and maybe an EM1 EM1X. So needless to say, I don't use rain covers and I don't worry about weather ever. If I get sand all over my camera, I hold it. I'll get it in a shower. Now I'm careful of the angles I hold it at. Sometimes I pour my water bottle over it. The new lens coats probably not going to send me one to test after I say this. The new lens coats are terrible. The quality's terrible. They fray. They hold moisture worse. I feel like they went to a cheaper material. And let me turn that off, bud. Oops. Oh no, hold on. I hit the wrong button. How do I
You're good.
stop sharing?
No, you're good now.
Okay, good. So I peeled that off my lens because I noticed a little mold was under it, and I cleaned that off. So I will not put a new lens coat on my camera or my body. Don't like them. They were not that way for a long time, but the product quality really dropped dramatically. And I'm not spending $100 like that for a crappy lens coat.
Well, when you do find a good product, you'll let us know, right, in your videos.
I sure, absolutely. So you saw how heavy that rain was?
Yeah.
Oh, nah. The only thing I worry about is keeping the water off the lens. Now, again, guys, this is important. That's for the lenses and the bodies that have that. Remember, not all lenses are that way. So don't go do it. Lee said, well, I said you can do it with the lenses that meet that qualification. So no, rain covers get in the way. I watch people struggle with that all the time.
Okay. Another question was about the lighting that you use for macro. A flash, natural LED, I guess it would depend on the situation, but
for me, most of the time, I shoot with the FL700 because it's kind of compact, but it has enough power. And then my diffuser is actually the one that's next to me. That's the AK diffuser. I love this diffuser. It's compact. You can take it down. You can also add a light in, so it makes it easier for you to focus. You can use the night vision that you have in the camera as well to focus, but I find that indeed having a little light inside your diffuser is also very helpful, especially if you do it at night. So that's my go-to. Most of my macro, except for the water drops, I use with flash. I want to have full control of my light, so that's how I shoot most of my macro.
for refraction stuff, you said you don't use flash?
I don't use
LED
a flash.
lighting?
I do flashlights. Actually, I have a flashlight somewhere right here. Oops. Let me grab it. I told you everything is accessible. So just a flashlight, and then you want to make sure that you're lightening your subject, the one that's refracting in, not your main subject. So, well, not your foreground subject, because your main subject is the one refracting. So that's what you want to light. And then mushroom is the same. I won't use the flash very often. I light the mushroom with a smaller light. So that's the only time where I don't use a flash. I really love the flash. It's just a beautiful way to diffuse your light. And
Because it's
yeah,
inside the diffuser.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So without a diffuser, if you're doing macro, you shouldn't be scared about a flash. Get a flash, put it in TTL, do a f16, and start shooting. Let the camera work for you, and then you're gonna start learning a little later. But you shouldn't be afraid of your flash. If that's what pushing you not to buy a flash and a diffuser, then TTL. Don't think about focus stacking for the beginning. Just do a f16 or higher, and then get the shot that you want to get that way. That's what I would recommend.
So you, Lee, did you have anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, if I'm not using a flash with a diffuser, then I have flashlights of varying strengths that I'll use on subjects. I have Lume Cube makes this cool little bitty light that has barn doors and diffusers on it that are great if you're going to try to do a creative angle. And then they have larger panels that, like for big, like if I'm doing a rattlesnake at night or something, I might have that a little further away to broadcast the light a little further. That are also good for like light painting a subject with it or whatever. So I have a little bag. I went looking for it. I just had it with me in Florida, but I have a little bag that I have, the Lume Cube little panel, the little Lume Cube small light, flashlights, and that I use for various types of lighting, to do creative stuff. I love the filled in look of a diffuser, but if that's all I do, sometimes my images can start looking, similar, even though they're very different. So sometimes doing dramatic backlighting, depending on the subject and that. So, and keeping it small, because when you're hand holding, you've got one hand on the camera, and you don't want something big that you're trying to maneuver around while you're doing that, spooking subjects.
Yeah, if you start working with lighting in general, yeah, that workflow in the field needs to be easy, right? So smaller. I like to use, I have these little tabletop tripods I put, LEDs on for mushrooms and stuff. Usually there's enough light.
Yeah.
Just to make things easier, so I can focus with two hands on the camera while the light is sitting. But anyway,
I think Emilie would probably agree with this too, particularly for macro. When I was younger, I used to carry 3 lenses, I'm going to do it all. And I learned that, particularly for macro, don't take anything else out, and look for days that are going to be good. You got 30-mile-an-hour winds. You should probably maybe not think about or do macro indoors, right? Set up a white box or whatever, or go out and learn where subjects are. Take advantage of whatever the time that you have available. But for macro, take the lens, take the flash. Don't take a ton of stuff. Macro requires a lot of physical strength, particularly if you're going to kneel down, lean over to position. Learn little techniques like not breathing out of your mouth on an insect, breathe out of your nose straight down or whatever. Macro can be very frustrating if you don't take a good approach. And so focus on it. Don't try to go out and do, hey, I'm going to do landscape at sunrise, birds for a little bit, then I'll go do macro when the light gets harsh. Go out with your macro and don't worry about, oh God, I had this over there. So what? Focus on the macro. Take what nature gives you, and I think you'll be better off, particularly for macro. Just, it may look sharp on the back of the camera, but that little subtle difference in focus can be a lot. So really work on nailing some sharp shots.
That's always good advice. Yeah. I mean, it always happens though. I'll bring out like my wide angle lens, and when like a bald eagle will land right in front of me.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter, because that's not why I was there.
That's not what you're out for. Just enjoy viewing the bald eagle. And, I've had clients, and I've been around photographers who they ruined their day and everybody else's day over the shot they didn't get versus, and I talk about an attitude of gratitude, delight, celebrate in what you do get. Don't let what you missed or messed up drag down your day. It's just a part of the learning process. And if I go out to do macro and I have a great storm crop up, that's okay. I don't stress about that.
That kind of leads me to the last thing. Couple of things I wanted to ask you was, what's like the weirdest thing you've ever seen? Maybe you didn't get a picture of it.
Golly, man, that's a good question. What's the weirdest thing I've seen but missed? Oh man. I had early one morning in the Pribilof Islands off Alaska, which is one of my favorite locations. I'm going to put together an OM system only bird in flight for Alaska, and that's going to be one of our spots. But I would get up early before everybody else, and because the light's up, forever up there, right? And I went to the edge of a cliff, and two things happened at once. Down below me, a harbor seal had a big halibut, and he was trying to fold it and maneuver it to eat it. And it'd be like a person taking a foot-long sub and trying to put it all in their mouth at once, And I watch it. And then on that island, they don't hunt the Arctic foxes. So this Arctic fox came up and sat within a couple of feet of me. And I won't lie, I was like, oh, I know they got to be the softest thing out there, right? And I wanted to pet him. So he was sitting right there. And I thought, well, and I put my hand out. And what was awesome is that fox just did this. He just leaned away. And then as I pulled my hand back, he sat back up. And twice we did that little dance. And I said, I got it. You're close enough. And I thought, man, if I'd have had a wide angle lens, it would have been this unbelievable shot,
Yeah.
Those two items that happened at the same time were pretty amazing. But I mean, I get a lot of the stuff, like I'm pretty fast, getting on stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to think what I miss. Emilie, what about you? While I think about
I was thinking about that. I don't know. And I think because I try not to think too much about, I can't believe I missed this shot. So I probably erase it from my memory. So
Yeah.
just
yeah.
to
Denial.
make me feel better. Denial. Yeah, no, I definitely did not miss that. That beautiful owl that just flew by and just came right in as the shot I wanted. And I missed it because I was just so stunned. And I think calming your nerve, that's one thing that I'm still having issue with from time to time, where I'm like, wow, this bird I just drove 4 hours. It's right in front of me. It's flying. I can't believe it's flying now. And I'm like just enjoying the moment. And I'm like, what am I doing? I just enjoy the moment. It's great, but I don't have the photo. And it's like, well, you know what? It's a beautiful moment. Yeah, I don't have a photo, and that's okay. So I try to erase those and just remember them as beautiful moment. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a photo of it.
You know what happens more often than not, Rob, is not what I missed. What happens more, particularly at 50 frames, is I sound like I'm doing a commercial for SH2. SH2, the dry mode for you, at 50 frames per second, sometimes you look at the back of the camera and you're like, I never even saw that. So in Zimbabwe, a tawny eagle swooped down and grabbed a mongoose, right? And he came up, and I got on the mongoose and the tawny eagle quick. And the mongoose family is chasing the eagle, but I stayed on the eagle in flight, and it went behind a big thick trunk, and it came out the other side, and I kept shooting, right? Just had no idea what happened. I get back to my, and none of the clients noticed it either. Even the local guide, King Richard, my local guide there, he was one of those guys, at age 7, he's out guarding the cattle from lions, while American parents are panicking over their kid eating, meat. This guy's out guarding cattle from lions at age 7, right? Well, I get back to my safari camp, and I upload images, and one frame, this tawny eagle, a black-shouldered kite, had come down and grabbed its head with both legs. The talon is right above the eye. It's riding it, and it's got the mongoose. Now, it's a little far forward in the frame, and I don't crop much, so I haven't shared that image. None of us had any idea it even happened. And even at 50 frames per second, I had one frame of that happening. That's what happens more often in photography. You're like, oh, I didn't even know it did that, and that's to me the beauty of photography is it's impossible to ever replicate the same image because even a 1/1000th of a second, things change, right? And that's one of the things I love about nature photography.
And that's so true. It's very often you take photos and you coming back, putting them on your computer and you're like, wow, is that the bird, like the hawk with the kingbird? When I took the photo, I thought, oh, I saw a little bit of red flash. Maybe it was a woodpecker or something, but that's a weird behavior. But okay, maybe. And so you're discovering things. And that reminds me of Vincent Munier, a very famous wildlife photographer. And he actually there is a movie about the snow leopard, Velvet Queen, right? And fabulous. I really highly recommend anybody watching the movie. And it's him going to look for the snow leopard. He takes a photo of a bird. He goes back home, and a few months later, he realized that the snow leopard was right there behind the bird, looking at him. He never saw it. He saw it like month later when he was editing his photos. And that's kind of the magic of photography. You never know what you're gonna get. You think you're getting this beautiful image of a bird, and at the end you got what you were looking for. It was just hidden. You were not looking at it. Your camera could see it before you.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
True. It's the images you captured that you didn't know you captured that sometimes the best one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had one of a, what do you call this thing? Swallow. I was trying to capture this swallow in flight. Now, one of the frames had his mouth open with a little mosquito right here,
Yeah. Yeah.
just about to get it.
Yeah.
But I would have, it wasn't like I was going for that, but then
No.
ended up getting one.
Cool.
So I'm going to ask one last question. I want to keep you guys here all day. I love talking to you, but you both have, I think, have the new 150 to 600 lens, and the 40 to or 150 to 400. But how do you feel about the 150 to 600? How's the performance, the sharpness, your first impressions, in other words?
So I don't know if you have tried it, Lee. I have. I really like it. I mean, obviously, it's not a pro lens, but it's a great lens. It's a lens that I actually bought because I'm going to use it to do more filming with it. I think it's going to be a great use. So I can still shoot with my 150-400, and then I use that little the 150-600 to do video. It's a little heavier. It's not as heavy as I thought it would be. So, but still, for me, light is a priority. And then, I mean, I'm sorry, but the 150-400 is the 150-400. Why would I ever replace it? I think the 150-600 is a great lens. If you are on a budget, you can't afford the 150-400, then yes, definitely it's a fantastic lens. Is it gonna be? It's sharp, but is it gonna be as sharp as the 150-400? No. You also need to use it in the right condition, the right light condition, and that's why for me it's gonna be just. I can't buy 250-400. So that's why I'm getting the 150-600. So I use it for filming.
So
how about you, Lee? How's your?
Yeah, I haven't bought one yet, but I have had a chance to test one, and I will get one to rent out to clients. Probably use it for some video. I really like the internal zoom on the 150-400, but I'm probably the one long lens I'm not as big a fan of is a 100-400. Okay. In the right hand, you can get great images with it. Okay. If you shoot to the right and all that. Here's the biggest challenge with the 150-600. People are going to try, older people particularly, and the Facebook gurus too, two different groups, but sometimes there's overlap. They're not going to shoot at a fast enough shutter speed. And there's going to be constant complaining that it's not sharp. And it's not the camera. That lens. I tested the autofocus in the parking lot at Precision Camera on a side mirror of a truck using bird tracking, and it was black with strong highlights. I thought, let's see. Bam! It grabbed it right away, and I first went, "All right, okay, I'm impressed." I think for the price point, it's going to be a great option as long as people remember it's an external zoom, so it's going to get longer.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure your shutter speed is where it needs to be. People are going to complain about that on Facebook, and I'll have to ignore it because otherwise I'll tell them stop being a goober, you know. But if you focus on how to use it properly, expose to the right, fast enough shutter speed, it's going to be a great lens for wildlife. Having the zoom, let's say because of my budget, I could choose between the 300 f4. I have two of them. I love it. And the 150 to 600. For the versatility for the average photographer, I'd probably recommend the 150 to 600 if they'll shoot with a fast enough shutter speed, just for the versatility of the focal of the focal length. And I'm a 300 f4 huge fan. That is a phenomenal lens. But I'm like Emilie, nothing's going to pull my 150 to 400 out of my hand, unless they made a 150 to 600 that had the same, that'd start getting too big. But I was impressed with the 150 to 600 was lighter than I expected, but it still got some weight. I was surprised by how short it was compared to the 150 to 400 until you zoom it out. So if people will keep its appropriate use and expectations in place, it will be a great lens for a lot of people. If you don't want to spend $7,500 on a lens, that to me is your next best bet for the versatility. And again, I'm a huge 300 f4 fan. I said I have two of them, right? So
yeah, me too.
And
I'm a big fan.
And for video, I mean, I tested it. So the OM1 Mark II, the 150-600, wind was blowing so hard. I was on the beach and handheld, and I couldn't believe the stabilization. I was actually very, very impressed. So to me, that extra stabilization we're getting on the Mark II, it's quite noticeable even on a lens like this that was heavy, and with that reach, it did so well. I was very impressed.
I have to laugh at people who go, "Oh, it's not an OM system lens; it's Sigma." Does people know how many of Sony's lenses get built by Tamron? I doubt they have any idea how many of Sony's lenses are built by Tamron. Like, it makes sense to have people who specialize in certain things build it. So this is not an unusual situation. It's an OM system lens, right? Design, all that kind of stuff. So people worry about the things that people worry about online are often not what great photographers worry about.
Well, the most common one I hear is, why are they charging so much more than, say, an equivalent? I'm like, who says OM system is the one charging more? It could be Sigma charging OM systems,
Yes. Well, and
don't know.
of course it's a lot more than the 100 to 400. My gosh, it's a ton more. It's not a little bit more reach. 200 millimeters is a ton of distance. 200 millers, believe me, Canon shooters that are loving their 200 800, they would kill to have another 200 millimeters on that lens, right? So you compare it properly. It should be more than the 100 to 400. It's a lot better lens than the 100 to 400. The autofocus speed is much faster. So again, people don't often compare apples to apples. Hey, I get it. We'd all love our camera gear for free, but so far we're not in that world, and hopefully we'll get there, right? But people don't understand what to compare to other things. Lens elements, the design, the focus speed. There's so much that goes into that. Computer chips that are it's different. They're not comparing apples to apples.
That's interesting. You think that's really a leaps and bounds better than the 100?
I would, if you ask me which one I'm going to buy, I'm buying the 150 to 600 every single time over the 100 to 400. The 100 to 400's autofocus is relatively slow, to be honest. I mean, I get it that I could get some great images with that. I'm going to get a lot more better images, I believe, with the 150 to 600 on the autofocus. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
But it's bigger. It's bigger.
There's
You have to give somewhere.
Yeah, there's always give and take and everything, right? And that's the thing, is people are like, if they had made it for Micro Four Thirds, it'd be smaller, and I'm like, no, it wouldn't. There's
people don't understand.
If you have a certain focal length and a certain aperture, that is the diameter of the lens.
There's very specific science and physics that goes into this stuff. It's not just random stuff. This isn't the Kardashians. This This is camera gear, you know?
I mean,
And at,
pending some radical change in technology, that's just the way it is.
yeah. And at the
I'm
end, the
sorry.
best lens is the one you have in your hands. Just learn how to
Yeah.
use your camera properly and get the best out of it. And just be happy with what you have. If it's 100, 400, that's great. If it's 150, 600, great. If you can afford the 156, 100, 150, 400, then excellent. But just, don't focus too much on getting the best gear. Just focus on the one you have right now and go and shoot. Just,
I always tell
Lee, you
people
need to do
upgrade
that.
here first.
Yes.
Upgrade
Yes.
this
Learn
first,
more.
and then everything
Yes.
else next.
Yeah. You know, Tim just commented he has the 100 to 400. And yes, he's right. He says you can get great results under the right conditions. Absolutely. Learning every lens we have, like we asked about the macro lenses and, which lens for night sky and all this. Well, landscape, I had the 7 to 14 2.8. And OM Systems sent me the 8 to 25 to test. And I thought, oh my God, why would they send me this lens? I already have the 7 to 14. I don't need the 8 to 25. And I shot with it for a day and I ordered it that night. I was like, it is now my favorite landscape lens. I can use screw-on filters. It handles sun flare better. And I love shooting into the sun. But I still have the 7 to 14, particularly for night sky. And I realize not everybody's going to be like Emilie and probably buy every lens, that we want to use like that. I get that. So, knowing, like Tim said, under the right conditions and using your lens right goes way further than buying a different lens. It goes way further, so giving yourself the advantage, setting up your autofocus settings. If I have the 100 to 400, I might change some of my autofocus settings from the 150 to 400. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So I appreciate Tim's comment in there because he's right. You're not going to fit a 600 millimeter lens in your pocket, no matter the sensor size of the camera.
I've gotten amazing results with my 75 to 300.
Yes.
$400 lens.
Yeah.
So it's all about making the best of what you have, and
that's right.
Totally.
And shutter speed. I did want to come back to you on that. Is tell me about shutter speed and what you've said it many times. Shutter speed's wrong. So if you could expand on that a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because this is probably the number one issue on any workshop for wildlife photography, and no doubt. Okay, if you are 16 above and you are struggling with some sharp images, okay, I recommend you do this for a while. Shoot with a minimum of 1/2500th of a second. If you are shooting 400 millimeters and above, or actually on OM system, if you're shooting at 250 millimeters and above on an OM system camera, for a while, I want you to have your slowest shutter speed at 1/2500th of a second. And you get back to me and tell me that your images aren't better already. I'll be very surprised if you said that's not true. Okay. Now, everybody, if you took Rob, Emilie, myself, and we picked 10 of y'all at random, and we went out in the field and we got the same lens. Let's say we had the 300 f4 and we said, let's see who can shoot the slowest. Probably for all of us, that would be different, wouldn't it? Right? Who knows where we might end up personally. You should do that. That might be a choice for an actual lens focal chart or a stuffed bird or whatever, and find if conditions are perfect with no wind and the subject sitting perfectly still, right? So maybe grandpa can substitute for the bird, right? How slow can you hold your shutter, or how low a shutter speed can you have and get a sharp shot? Okay. Knowing that database, I will do what I call getting greedy. Let's say I'm at 1/2500. Now, for birds in flight, you should stay higher. And you also need to know that with a great blue heron, 1/800th of a second might work, but that's not working for a peregrine falcon. Okay. So I'm going to do an article in the Journal of Wildlife Photography on, I did flight styles of birds, and that's going to affect your shutter speed. But let's talk about a perch bird. So let's say I'm at 1/2500 and I've got some sharp shots. If the bird's cooperative, I can quickly drop my ISO several stops and drop my shutter speed to 1/125th, and boom, 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 right? I call that getting greedy when you have a cooperative subject. So, but what that's going to be for each of us is different. So you need to develop your own internal database of your abilities, and that obviously varies by camera lens and body combination. For me, I see a lot of people shoot the 150 to 400 without a battery grip. I don't like that. It's too heavy in the front. I know Emilie does. That's why she's got her big grin. I hate that.
That's maybe because I don't drink caffeine.
You're not all jacked up on Mountain Dew? Is that what you're saying? So I want the battery grip for the balance that it gives. Okay. But some people may not want that. So you've got to learn the systems that work for you. But I recommend for most people 60 over, and even if you're younger, birds moving very quickly, right? So just try going to faster shutter speeds for a while and see if your photography doesn't get better. With software like DxO Pure Raw 3 or Pure Raw 4 now, your ISO really doesn't matter if you expose to the right, start with a sharp shot, and don't crop the crap out of it. Okay? So yes, but try, just please, you get some things happen once. You know, in Yellowstone on my third trip this year, I had a wolf on a bison hunt, right? I mean, how many times am I going to have at 70 yards a wolf bison hunt occurring where we were the first ones there and the last ones to leave? Do I want to risk too slow a shutter speed for that? That would be so silly, wouldn't it? Right? So that's one of my biggest things that I harp on over and over and over again. Most people, I don't care how many stops of image stabilization we have. So far, no Peregrine has gone, oh my God, he has 8.5 stops of image stabilization. I'm going to fly slower. You know what I mean? So just because we have great image stabilization doesn't mean that works in all situations. Image stabilization, when I'm photographing a Peregrine stooping on something, right? You're not getting that, period, probably, right? But the swallow shot, right? I have a similar one from Brazil where its mouth's open. There's a little bit. Man, if my shutter speed were too slow, it's just not going to look good.
Absolutely. I would, like you said, we all have different minimum shutter speeds that we can handhold, but it doesn't matter if the bird is moving like a swallow. You need to be at 1/4000.
It's hauling butt, isn't it?
Yeah. So otherwise, you know, unless you want that motion blur in the wings or something.
On the wing tips,
Which comes with experience.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say shutter speed is the most common reason I've seen people get blurry shots.
And you got to learn to assess your image for sharpness. I did a video a few weeks back about assessing image sharpness, and you need to know the difference because the solutions to the problems are different. So y'all, if y'all didn't watch that one, go there. Rob was talking to me about it the other day, just briefly. You know, he made a comment about, but assessing what went wrong is not the same in every image, why something isn't sharp. So the more you can look at an image and say what went wrong here, the more you'll learn about the solution. But the number one problem for most people in my workshops is too slow a shutter speed because they're afraid of a high ISO, because some nimwit on Facebook said, well, you can't shoot OM system above 1600. By the way, that is my default ISO when I turn on my camera for wildlife is 1600. And I'm normally going up. Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem. I shoot 1600. Yeah, that's rare. I get anything that low.
Yes. You need a lot. That's
rare.
Right. Yeah.
But okay, Emilie, any last words you want to share with our viewers?
I want
Words
to
of
tell
inspiration.
them, yeah, I want to tell them to get out there, go and shoot. You have the whole afternoon, depending where you are. And that's just how you're going to progress. Yes, be inspired by other people, but invest in yourself. Yes, invest in a good lens, but also invest in yourself because that's the most important. So you want to spend time outside with your camera, taking photos. You want to spend time learning about your camera. You want to spend time learning how to use your camera. And then also I want to tell everybody to just reach out to any of us, because I know that I can send a message to Rob or Lee and I'm going to get an answer. I know all the OM system ambassadors, most of them, I definitely will get answers. And when I started, that's what I did. You know, I reached out when I had questions, and I just got involved to be a better photographer. So, and have fun.
Yes.
Those are my last words.
That's really important, is that's what's great about this community and the OM System ambassadors. I think one of the biggest things OM System has done is really promote the community, for the OM System ambassador to be accessible. I just don't see that kind of support in any other system. That's what I really like, and that's why I like having you on here with to share your experience, and also to show that you're real people and you're accessible, right here.
Yes.
How about you,
Any
Lee?
questions?
Yeah.
Send them our ways.
Happy, yeah. I will respond to stuff that's directly. I don't go. If you look on Facebook groups, I'm not a part of them anymore. I don't have the time to dicker with some of that silliness. But I'm happy. Instagram message. Facebook Messenger sometimes doesn't give us good notices. But there's a variety of ways. We have it on our website for Wildside. Hop out there. You can find Emilie and I through the website. But I know both of us love, and we'll talk to each other, and we'll ask other OM System ambassadors. So if you ask about portrait stuff, well, I know guys that shoot OM System with portrait stuff, man. Now I know Rob and no other guys say, hey, man, I may not know the answer, but I will know who will know the answer. And as Emilie was saying, we're a really good group, close knit for the most part amongst the ambassadors. And that's even with employees, we're like a family. We have brutally honest conversations. At least I know I do. And, we get along great. We really enjoy being around each other. And there's a lot of information sharing amongst ourselves. So feel free. And if you don't, there's other OM System ambassadors out there with different styles, different approaches. Eric Rock, he's a great friend of mine, and he's up in Montana. Man, that guy's been all over the world, and he's a lot quieter, but he's got great information. So if you ask him, he's going to share. And Matt Seuss is up there. He does a lot of landscape stuff and night sky, and you got a lot of folks doing a lot of different things in the ambassador program. Some of those folks have been photographing 30, 40, 50 years. There's a host of knowledge and information out there. So take advantage of that. Let me address this, Rob, too, real quick. I've heard people say, well, I don't want to listen to ambassadors because they're paid. I did a video about how that's not the case. Are there some that may not be honest? I don't know. I'm not them. I'll damn sure shoot straight with you about how I feel or what I think. But know this, like I had a guy say, well, I'm going to follow people on YouTube, their OM System shooters that aren't ambassadors. I assure you, every one of them, if they were invited to be an ambassador, would hop on board immediately. So does that mean you would quit watching them? That's kind of stupid if I'm honest about it. So listen, OM System ambassadors, we all have different interests and whatnot. Take advantage of that, man. We're a good resource,
Absolutely. Oh, that was awesome, guys. I tell you, man, I'm so glad you were available and able to come and join us and be with our viewers here today.
Pleasure to be here.
Live. Yeah. I think it's important that you reach out as much as often as we can. And you guys have been awesome today, answering questions, experience. I look forward to what you're going to be doing in the future. As I said, I do have your Linktree links down below, which is, contacts all your social media, mentoring or workshops. Invest in yourself, like Emilie said. You could, if somebody just has a kit lens, basic camera setup, spend the rest of their money on trips and mentoring and workshops, they're going to get better images every day.
That's right.
That's true.
So definitely don't underestimate the value of that.
Very true.
Anyway, guys, thanks so much. Stay on just for a few minutes. I'm going to end the stream, but I want to thank all my viewers, everyone that's joined us today, for being here and sharing your comments in the chat section. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you so much, Rob, for everything, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.